Have you ever noticed how no matter how much love you give or how much approval you chase, there is still a part of you that feels unseen and empty inside? You might think the problem is that others don't love you enough, but the truth is far deeper. You have been searching for love in every direction except the one that truly matters, within yourself. Buddhism teaches that the mind shapes our reality, and when the mind is filled with self-doubt and criticism, the world reflects that suffering back to us. But when you choose to honor yourself, when you learn to love yourself first, everything begins to shift. As the Buddha once said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. 1. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Many of us grow up with the belief that in order to be considered good, worthy, or valuable, we must always put others before ourselves. We convince ourselves that our duty is to constantly give, whether it's giving time to family, energy to friends, loyalty to jobs, or even endless sacrifices for society. And while giving is a beautiful act, the danger comes when we forget that we too are human beings with needs, limits, and emotions. If we spend all of our days pouring our energy outward without ever pausing to refill our own well, it is inevitable that exhaustion, bitterness, and resentment begin to take root inside us. This is why so many people feel like they are drowning in responsibilities, smiling on the outside while secretly breaking down within. The truth is simple but often overlooked. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Imagine trying to give someone a drink when your own cup is bone dry. No matter how much you want to, there is simply nothing there to give. In the same way, when your heart has not been replenished with compassion, when your mind has not been calmed with patience, and when your body has not been cared for, you cannot truly give anything meaningful to the people around you. At best, you give fragments. At worst, you give with hidden frustration or silent resentment, and that energy is felt by those you are trying to help. Buddhism reminds us that balance is essential in life. Just as breathing requires both inhaling and exhaling, so too must life require both giving and receiving. If you only exhale, you suffocate. In the same way, if you only give and never receive, whether that receiving is rest, reflection, or self-compassion, you slowly suffocate your own spirit. Loving yourself means understanding that taking care of your needs is not selfish. It is an act of wisdom. By recharging your spirit, nourishing your body with healthy food and rest, and being gentle with your inner dialogue, you are filling your own cup. Meditation, solitude, moments of quiet reflection, or simply saying no when you need to. These are not acts of neglect toward others, but acts of maintenance toward yourself. And when you are full, everything changes. Giving no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a natural overflow. You don't give because you are desperate to be seen or loved in return. You give because love is already alive within you and naturally flows outward. Think of a river. If its source dries up, the riverbed cracks and life disappears. But when the river is fed by springs of water, it flows abundantly and nourishes everything along its path. The same is true for your love. When you learn to keep your cup full, your love, kindness, and generosity flow freely, effortlessly, and without expectation. 2. You teach others how to treat you. Every single day, through your actions, your words, and even your silence, you are teaching the people around you how they are allowed to treat you. Most of us don't realize it, but the way we treat ourselves sets the invisible standard for the world. If you constantly criticize yourself, speak harshly about your own mistakes, or carry yourself with insecurity, people will sense that energy and reflect it back to you. They may not even do it consciously. It's simply the way human beings respond. If you tolerate disrespect, others quickly learn that they can give you less than you deserve, and you will accept it. But if you carry yourself with quiet dignity, If you refuse to allow others to belittle or diminish you, the message becomes clear. This is the level of respect I expect, because this is how I respect myself. Buddhism teaches that the mind is the root of all experiences, and this principle applies here too. If your mind is filled with self-doubt, the world mirrors it by offering you doubt. If your mind is filled with worthlessness, you unconsciously invite others to treat you as though your worth is small. But if your mind is cultivated with self-love, compassion, and dignity, that inner energy changes your outer experience. Think of it like a mirror. When you smile at it, it smiles back, and when you frown, it frowns in return. The people you interact with daily are like mirrors reflecting back the way you see yourself. To understand this better, imagine someone who is constantly apologizing for existing, always saying sorry for things that aren't their fault, always putting themselves last, and always ignoring their own needs to please others. Over time, the people around them stop valuing their presence because that person has shown through their behavior that their needs don't matter. But imagine someone who treats themselves with respect, who sets healthy boundaries, who knows when to say yes and when to say no, who speaks kindly to themselves even when they fail. Others will naturally respond to that energy with greater care because it is clear that this is a person who honors themselves and therefore expects honor in return. It is not about arrogance, nor about demanding from others. True self-love creates a natural aura of dignity. You do not need to shout or prove yourself. People simply feel it. When you walk into a room with self-respect, people notice your calm confidence. When you speak with kindness toward yourself, people mirror that kindness back. And when you refuse to settle for less than what you know you deserve, you clear space for relationships and opportunities that are aligned with your true value. This lesson is especially important in relationships. If you do not love yourself, you may tolerate partners who mistreat you, friends who use you, or environments that drain you. You stay, hoping that if you give enough, if you try harder, eventually they will change. But when you love yourself, you understand that staying in places where you are disrespected is not compassion, it is self-abandonment. Loving yourself first teaches others without words that they cannot treat you carelessly because you refuse to treat yourself carelessly. So remember this truth. Every time you choose to respect yourself, to forgive yourself, and to value yourself, you are writing the silent rulebook for how others will treat you. Love yourself first, and you'll notice that the world slowly begins to follow your example. The wrong people fall away because they cannot meet your new standard, and the right people appear, drawn to the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. 3. Inner peace attracts outer harmony. Buddhism teaches that the mind is the forerunner of all things, that our outer experience is shaped and colored by the state of our inner world. If the mind is restless, filled with self-criticism, anger, and doubt, then the world appears equally hostile, noisy, and unkind. But when we nurture a peaceful inner landscape, life begins to respond in ways that feel calm, balanced, and harmonious. This is why loving yourself is not just about how you feel inside, it directly shapes how you experience life on the outside. Think about a person who is constantly at war with themselves. Their inner voice is harsh, always pointing out flaws, always comparing, always reminding them of every mistake. That same energy spills into their relationships. They may become defensive, quick to anger, or constantly anxious in social situations. Even when no one is judging them, they feel judged. Even when no one intends harm, they feel attacked. The turmoil inside makes the world appear dangerous, and so life itself becomes a battlefield. Now compare that to someone who has cultivated inner peace through self-love and self-compassion. This person may still face challenges, but because they have learned to forgive themselves, to be patient with their flaws, and to speak kindly to their own heart, they carry a different energy. They are not quick to anger because they are not already angry within. They are not quick to judge others because they are not constantly judging themselves. Instead of reacting harshly, they respond with calm understanding, and this calmness radiates outward. People around them feel safe, respected, and valued in their presence. Workplaces feel lighter, family interactions feel smoother, and even strangers notice the gentleness in their energy. It is not that the world magically becomes perfect, it is that the world reflects the harmony that already exists inside. Just as a still pond reflects the sky clearly while a stormy pond distorts everything, so too does your mind reflect the world. When your inner pond is calm, life appears more beautiful, more manageable, and more forgiving. But when your inner pond is chaotic, life seems distorted, confusing, and hostile. This is why Buddhism emphasizes practices like meditation, mindfulness, and compassion. They are not escapes from life. They are ways of cultivating peace within so that life itself feels lighter. When you sit quietly and breathe deeply, you are teaching your mind to slow down. When you forgive yourself for a mistake instead of punishing yourself endlessly, you are planting seeds of compassion. When you take time to notice beauty in small things, the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of a stranger, you are training your mind to see harmony instead of chaos. Over time, this inner work begins to change how people treat you and how life unfolds around you. Imagine walking into a tense room. One person enters carrying anxiety, and instantly everyone feels heavier. Another person enters carrying peace, and suddenly the tension eases. This is the power of inner energy. People may not understand it logically, but they sense it deeply. Your calmness becomes a medicine, not only for yourself, but for everyone you encounter. And it all begins with self-love, because when you love yourself, you stop fighting constant inner wars. You stop being your own enemy. You become your own source of comfort, strength, and healing. So if you want more harmony in your relationships, in your work, and in the world around you, do not begin by trying to control others or by demanding peace from the outside. Begin by turning inward. Learn to love yourself, to calm your own storms, and to forgive your own wounds. Once the inner peace takes root, the outer world cannot help but respond in harmony. 4. You break free from the chains of comparison. One of the most common and painful traps in life is the constant urge to compare ourselves to others. It begins early. We look at classmates and notice who is smarter, who is better liked, or who seems more confident. As we grow older, the comparisons grow sharper. We compare jobs, wealth, appearance, possessions, relationships, and even happiness. Social media has made this even worse because at any moment we can scroll through carefully edited highlights of other people's lives and silently measure our own worth against them. But Buddhism reminds us that this endless comparison is a form of suffering, a chain that keeps us trapped in dissatisfaction because it prevents us from seeing the beauty and worth in our own unique journey. The problem with comparison is that it is never ending. There will always be someone who appears to be ahead of you, just as there will always be someone who is behind you. If you base your self-worth on this constantly shifting scale, you will never feel at peace. Even when you achieve something, you will quickly look for someone else who has more, and suddenly your joy disappears. It is like drinking salty water. You keep drinking, hoping to satisfy your thirst, but the more you drink, the thirstier you become. In the same way, comparison can never quench your longing for validation. It only deepens the emptiness. Loving yourself first is what breaks this chain. When you truly love and accept yourself, You no longer need to measure your value against someone else's accomplishments, looks, or possessions. You begin to see that you are not meant to walk their path, nor are they meant to walk yours. Just as a lotus blooms in its own season and a rose blooms in another, you too have your own timing, your own rhythm, and your own journey. Comparing the two would be meaningless because both are beautiful in their own unique ways. The Buddha once said, "Your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself to it." This wisdom reminds us that our task is not to become someone else, but to fully embrace who we are and what we are here to do. Imagine for a moment two musicians. One is a master pianist, the other a skilled guitarist. If the guitarist spends his entire life envying the pianist, believing he is less worthy because he cannot play piano as beautifully, he will miss the gift of his own instrument. But when he learns to love and value himself, he embraces the guitar fully, creating music that is unique to him. The same is true in life. We each hold a different instrument, and comparison only silences our own song. Self-love allows us to play it fully, joyfully, and without apology. When you stop comparing, you also free yourself from jealousy. Instead of feeling threatened by someone else's success, you can celebrate it because it does not take anything away from your own path. This is one of the most liberating shifts that self-love brings. You realize that life is not a race with one finish line and one winner. It is a vast garden where many flowers bloom at once. Some bloom early, some bloom late, some grow tall, and others spread wide, but each has its own beauty. Loving yourself means recognizing that your bloom is no less important, no less worthy, and no less beautiful than anyone else's. Comparison also loses its power when you recognize that what you see in others is never the full truth. Many people you envy for their success may be struggling with loneliness, fear, or pain you cannot see. Many who appear flawless are carrying invisible battles. When you love yourself, you stop chasing illusions, and you focus instead on what truly matters: your growth, your peace, and your purpose. You begin to measure life not by how you rank against others, but by how deeply you are living in alignment with your values. Self-love is the key that unlocks this freedom. It whispers to you, you are enough as you are, and your worth is not defined by comparison. With this awareness, the heavy chains of envy and insecurity fall away. You no longer need to prove yourself by competing, and you no longer feel small when someone else shines. Instead, you walk your own path with freedom, honoring your own pace and trusting that your light will shine in its own time. And when you live this way, life feels lighter because you are no longer running someone else's race. You are finally free to run your own. 5. Self-compassion heals wounds faster than self-criticism. Human beings have an extraordinary ability to be kind, forgiving, and gentle toward others, yet when it comes to themselves, many people become their harshest critics. We can easily comfort a friend who has made a mistake, offering them words of encouragement, reminding them that everyone stumbles, and reassuring them that their worth is not defined by one failure. But when we make mistakes ourselves, we often take on the role of the merciless judge rather than the compassionate friend. We replay the mistake endlessly in our minds, calling ourselves names, magnifying the failure until it feels like it defines our entire identity. This tendency toward self-criticism might feel like it makes us stronger, as if punishing ourselves will prevent us from repeating the same error, but in truth, it weakens us. Buddhism teaches us that the path to healing is never paved with cruelty, it is paved with compassion. When we choose self-compassion over self-criticism, we open the door to faster and deeper healing. Think about it in terms of physical wounds. If you cut your hand, you do not continue slicing at it to teach it a lesson. You clean the wound, you treat it gently, and you give it time to heal. In the same way, when your heart or mind is wounded, whether through mistakes, failure, or disappointment, The harsh voice of self-criticism only deepens the wound. It adds salt to it, turning what could have been a temporary setback into a lifelong scar. Compassion, on the other hand, is the medicine that soothes. When you treat yourself with kindness in moments of failure, you give your mind and heart the safety they need to recover and grow. Self-compassion does not mean ignoring mistakes or pretending they do not matter. It means facing them honestly, but without cruelty. In Buddhism, there is a deep understanding that suffering and error are part of the human condition. No one walks through life without stumbling, because stumbling is part of learning how to walk. When you practice self-compassion, you look at your mistakes as teachers rather than enemies. You ask, "What is this experience showing me? How can I grow from this?" instead of endlessly repeating, "I am worthless, I am stupid, I am not good enough." The energy of the first question allows you to transform your pain into wisdom, while the second only traps you in endless suffering. Consider the way a compassionate teacher corrects a student. A harsh teacher might scold the student, humiliate them for their mistake, and leave them feeling afraid of trying again. A compassionate teacher, however, will point out the mistake gently, explain how to do it better, and encourage the student to keep practicing. Which student is more likely to improve? The one who is encouraged, not the one who is beaten down. You are both the student and the teacher of your own life, and you must decide which approach to take. Self-criticism will paralyze you. Self-compassion will free you to grow. Let us also remember that the Buddha himself emphasized compassion not only for others, but also for oneself. The teachings on metta, loving-kindness, meditation, begin with generating love and kindness toward yourself before extending it to others. Why? Because you cannot truly give what you do not have. If you try to be compassionate toward the world while being merciless toward yourself, your compassion will eventually run dry and resentment will grow. But when you first learn to direct compassion inward, to forgive yourself, to accept your imperfections, to embrace your humanity, your heart becomes a boundless source of love that flows outward without effort. Many people resist self-compassion because they fear it will make them weak or complacent. They believe that if they stop criticizing themselves, they will lose their motivation to improve. But the opposite is true. Think of a plant. If you shout at a plant, criticize it for not growing fast enough, and deprive it of water and sunlight, it will wither and die. But if you nurture it, give it care, and provide the conditions it needs, it will grow stronger and more resilient. Human beings are the same. Harshness does not create lasting growth. It creates fear, avoidance, and shame. Compassion, however, provides the nourishment that allows genuine growth to flourish. In practical terms, self-compassion means learning to speak to yourself differently. Instead of saying, "I always fail, I am useless," you say, "I made a mistake, but mistakes are part of learning. I will try again." Instead of saying, "I am broken," you say, "I am healing, and healing takes time." It means catching yourself when your inner voice turns cruel and gently redirecting it toward kindness. Over time, this shift in self-talk rewires the way you see yourself and your life. You stop identifying as a failure and start identifying as a learner, someone on a journey of growth. The benefits of self-compassion go beyond just emotional well-being. They extend into relationships, work, and even health. Studies have shown that people who practice self-compassion are less anxious, less depressed, and more resilient in the face of challenges. They are also kinder to others, because when you no longer carry the heavy burden of self-hate, you have more space in your heart for patience and understanding. In relationships, self-compassion allows you to communicate more honestly because you are not constantly hiding behind shame. At work, it allows you to take risks and try new things without the paralyzing fear of failure. In health, it reduces stress, which benefits the body as much as the mind. Perhaps most importantly, self-compassion creates freedom. Self-criticism chains you to the past, forcing you to relive mistakes and failures over and over again. Compassion, however, allows you to let go. It acknowledges what happened, learns from it, and moves forward. This is one of the most powerful gifts of Buddhist wisdom, the understanding that each moment is new, and in each moment you have the opportunity to begin again. When you practice self-compassion, you no longer define yourself by your worst moments. Instead, you give yourself permission to keep evolving, to keep walking the path, and to keep becoming. So remember this truth: you are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are not the harsh voice in your head that tells you that you are unworthy. You are a human being on a journey, learning as you go, stumbling and rising, falling and standing again. And the journey becomes far more beautiful when you walk it with a gentle heart. Self-criticism will always keep you chained to suffering, but self-compassion will open the doors to healing, wisdom, and growth. By loving yourself with patience and kindness, you give yourself the greatest chance to flourish. And when you flourish, everyone around you benefits from the light you radiate. 6. Loving yourself helps you let go of toxic attachments. One of the deepest causes of human suffering, as Buddhism repeatedly teaches, is attachment. We cling to people, possessions, expectations, and even identities because we believe that without them we will be incomplete. In many ways, attachment arises from fear: the fear of being alone, the fear of being unworthy, the fear of facing life without something or someone to hold on to. And while love, connection, and belonging are natural human needs, there is a vast difference between healthy love and toxic attachment. Healthy love allows freedom, growth, and balance. Toxic attachment, on the other hand, suffocates, enslaves, and drains the soul. What keeps us trapped in these unhealthy bonds is often a lack of self-love, because when you do not truly value yourself, you accept mistreatment, cling to relationships that harm you, and settle for far less than you deserve. Think about the many times people stay in relationships long after the love has died, or long after the relationship has turned harmful. They stay not because it brings joy or peace, but because they fear the emptiness of being alone. Deep down, they believe they are not enough by themselves, that they require another person's validation to feel complete. This is what toxic attachment looks like: clinging to what hurts you because you are afraid of facing yourself. But when you begin to love yourself, something shifts. You realize that being alone is not a curse, but an opportunity for growth, healing, and rediscovery. You no longer settle for pain disguised as love because you know you deserve more. Self-love acts like a light in a dark room. It illuminates the truth of your relationships, your habits, and your attachments. When you love yourself, you can see clearly which connections uplift you and which ones drain you, which habits bring peace and which ones bring suffering. Suddenly, the excuses you once made for people who mistreated you no longer make sense because your inner love refuses to accept abuse as affection. You stop tolerating what devalues you, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself. Loving yourself means finally listening to the quiet voice inside that has always whispered, "You deserve better." Toxic attachment does not only exist in relationships with people, it also shows up in the way we cling to material things, social status, or rigid expectations of life. We may attach ourselves to a job that makes us miserable because we are afraid of losing financial stability. We may cling to possessions thinking they define our worth. We may even hold on tightly to outdated versions of ourselves, refusing to let go of an identity that no longer fits. But in all of these attachments, the root cause is the same. We are afraid that without these things, we will not be enough. Self-love dissolves that fear. When you deeply love and accept yourself, You understand that your worth does not depend on external things. You can let go of a toxic job, a draining friendship, or an unhealthy expectation because your identity and value are not tied to them. Buddhism often compares attachment to holding onto a burning rope. The longer you hold, the more it burns you, but you convince yourself that letting go would hurt more. And so people hold on until their hands bleed. Loving yourself is what gives you the courage to finally release the rope. You realize that the pain of letting go is temporary, but the pain of clinging is endless. Self-love gives you the strength to choose freedom over bondage, peace over suffering. Consider this. When you do not love yourself, you chase love from places that cannot give it. You beg for validation from people who take you for granted, and you mold yourself into shapes that please others while breaking yourself in the process. But when you begin to practice self-love, the begging stops. You no longer need to prove your worth to anyone because you already know it. And when you no longer need to beg, you no longer cling. You can walk away from relationships, jobs, or situations that demean you because you finally trust that your value is not dependent on them. Letting go of toxic attachments does not mean you stop caring. On the contrary, it means you begin to care in a healthier way. When you let go of clinging, you stop trying to control people or outcomes. You allow life to flow as it is meant to. You can still love people, but you love them with freedom rather than fear. You no longer say, "I cannot live without you." Instead, you say, "I choose to share this path with you, but I will remain whole even if our paths separate." That is the kind of love that is rooted in strength, not desperation. This lesson is also deeply connected to forgiveness. Many toxic attachments are fueled by the inability to forgive, whether it is forgiving others or forgiving yourself. You may cling to anger toward someone who hurt you, replaying their betrayal in your mind, believing that holding on to that anger somehow protects you. Or you may cling to guilt over your own past mistakes, believing that if you punish yourself long enough, you will atone for them. But clinging to anger or guilt is another form of toxic attachment. It keeps you chained to the past and prevents you from living in the present. Loving yourself gives you the courage to forgive. Not because the past didn't matter, but because you deserve peace more than you deserve punishment. When you let go of toxic attachments, what happens is profound. Your energy, once drained by clinging, becomes available for growth. Your mind, once clouded by fear and insecurity, becomes clear and calm. Your heart, once weighed down by desperation, begins to feel light. You open space in your life for relationships that are healthy, opportunities that align with your values, and experiences that nourish rather than harm. Letting go does not mean losing. It means making space for something better to arrive. Think of your life as a garden. If you cling to weeds because you fear emptiness, the flowers will never have space to bloom. But if you love yourself enough to pull out the weeds, even if it leaves bare patches for a while, the soil becomes fertile for beauty to grow. Loving yourself is what gives you the patience to endure that temporary emptiness, trusting that what is meant for you will bloom in its own time. Buddhism teaches impermanence, that everything changes, nothing is fixed, and clinging to what is already shifting only creates suffering. When you love yourself, you embrace this truth. You stop trying to force permanence on relationships, possessions, or identities that were never meant to last forever. Instead, you trust that just as seasons change, so too do the chapters of your life. Some people come to teach you lessons, others to share joy, and others to guide you briefly before departing. Self-love helps you honor each role without clinging desperately to what must eventually pass. So if you find yourself holding on to something or someone that is draining you, ask yourself this: am I holding on out of love or out of fear? If the answer is fear, then it is not love at all. It is attachment. And if it is attachment, then the path to freedom lies in turning inward, filling yourself with compassion and realizing that you are whole, complete, and worthy even without that person, possession, or expectation. That realization gives you the courage to let go, and with that letting go, life opens up in ways you could never have imagined. Remember this: you are not meant to live life in chains. You are not meant to beg for love, to cling to what destroys you, or to hold on to pain as proof of strength. You are meant to live free, to walk lightly, and to love without fear. And the first step to that freedom is learning to love yourself enough to say, I deserve peace, I deserve joy, I deserve better. When that truth takes root, the chains of toxic attachment begin to fall away and your spirit begins to rise. 7. Self-love connects you to universal love. When most people hear the phrase love yourself, they imagine it as something personal, private, and even isolated. They think it means turning inward and focusing only on the self. But in Buddhist teachings, true self-love is never selfish. In fact, it is the opposite. It is the foundation that allows you to dissolve the illusion of separation and expand into something far greater. When you love yourself in a healthy way, you begin to see that you are not a separate being existing against the world. You are part of the whole fabric of life. The compassion you extend inward becomes the very same compassion that flows outward, reaching others, reaching all living beings, and eventually connecting you to the universal love that binds existence together. To understand this, imagine a candle flame. If the flame is weak and flickering because the candle itself is neglected, it has no power to share light. But when the candle is cared for, protected from the wind, given enough wax to burn steadily, the flame grows strong. And a strong flame can light countless other candles without diminishing its own brightness. This is exactly how self-love works. When you nurture your own flame with kindness, forgiveness, and respect, you grow steady and radiant. From that strength, you naturally share warmth and light with others. But if your own flame is neglected, no matter how much you try to give, you cannot offer true light. In Buddhism, this expansion of love is practiced through metta meditation or loving-kindness meditation. The practice begins with yourself. You sit quietly, breathe deeply, and generate feelings of love toward your own heart, saying silently, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be peaceful, may I live with ease." Once your own heart is filled with this kindness, you extend it outward, first to loved ones, then to neutral people, then even to those you may have conflicts with, and finally to all beings everywhere. But notice the order. It begins with the self. Because if you cannot sincerely wish peace for yourself, how can you authentically wish it for the world? Self-love is the seed, and universal love is the blossoming flower. When you truly love yourself, you begin to see that your worth is equal to every other being's worth. You are not above others, and you are not below them. This dissolves the dangerous illusions of superiority and inferiority. A lack of self-love often drives people to arrogance because they try to cover their inner wounds with pride, or it drives them to self-pity, believing they are less deserving of happiness than others. But self-love anchors you in balance. You begin to understand that just as you deserve compassion, so too does every living being. Just as you deserve forgiveness, so too does every other person, animal, or creature that exists. This realization expands your heart in powerful ways. When someone mistreats you, instead of responding with hatred, you are able to see that they too are suffering in some way, and their actions come from their own inner wounds. When you see a stranger struggling, you do not turn away because your self-love has trained you to recognize suffering and to meet it with compassion instead of judgment. When you look at nature, the trees, the rivers, the mountains, you begin to feel connected to it all because you no longer see yourself as separate. Self-love opens the doorway to this expansion by dissolving the inner war. Once you are at peace within, you see peace as possible everywhere. Another profound way self-love connects you to universal love is through the recognition of impermanence and shared humanity. You begin to understand that every being is walking a path of joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death. When you forgive yourself for your flaws, you also learn to forgive others for theirs, because you see that all beings are struggling, learning, and stumbling forward. Your compassion expands naturally. Loving yourself first teaches you that you are not alone in your suffering, and this shared understanding creates empathy. The very pain that once made you feel isolated becomes the bridge that connects you to the rest of humanity. Imagine standing in a crowded street. Without self-love, you might feel small, disconnected, or invisible among the faces passing by. But with self-love, you feel whole. You look around and realize that each person you see carries their own burdens, their own dreams, their own fears. You begin to wish them peace, silently, just as you have wished peace for yourself. And in that moment, the boundary between me and them begins to dissolve. You realize you're all walking together in the great flow of life. This is the beginning of universal love. Buddhism often uses the metaphor of waves and the ocean. Each of us is like a wave, unique, individual, with our own shape and journey. But beneath the surface, we are all part of the same ocean. When you do not love yourself, you see yourself as a lonely wave, separate and fragile, always crashing against others. But when you love yourself, you recognize your true nature as the ocean itself, vast, connected, and inseparable from the whole. In this recognition, love expands beyond the self and embraces everything, because everything is part of the same essence. Self-love also transforms how you give love. Without self-love, giving often comes from need. You give because you want validation, approval, or love in return. And when it is not reciprocated, you feel hurt or resentful. But with self-love, giving becomes unconditional. You give because your heart is already full, not because you are trying to fill an emptiness. This unconditional love is what connects you to universal love. It is no longer about who deserves it or who has earned it. It flows freely because love itself becomes your natural state of being. This is why so many Buddhist teachers emphasize that true compassion begins with the self. It is not selfish, it is the foundation. If you hate yourself, your attempts to love others will always carry shadows of resentment, fear, or need. But if you love yourself, you give freely, joyfully, and without calculation. And when many individuals live this way, universal love is no longer an ideal, it becomes a lived reality. Communities heal, families grow stronger, and societies shift, because the energy of compassion begins to ripple outward like waves across water. Let us also remember that universal love does not mean you agree with everything or accept harmful behavior. It means that even when you set boundaries, even when you walk away from toxic people, you still hold compassion in your heart. You do not wish harm because you understand that harming others only creates more suffering in the great web of life. Universal love is not blind acceptance, it is wise compassion. And the ability to practice wise compassion arises only when you love yourself enough to stand firm in your values while still holding space for understanding. Ultimately, loving yourself is the key that unlocks the truth of interconnectedness. It begins as a personal journey. You learn to speak kindly to yourself, to forgive your own mistakes, and to honor your own worth. But as that love deepens, it overflows into every corner of your life. You see yourself in others and others in yourself. You see that your happiness is linked to the happiness of all beings, and your suffering is not separate from theirs. This awareness is what Buddhism calls karuna, the great compassion that arises naturally from the recognition of oneness. So remember, when you love yourself first, you are not closing yourself off. You are opening yourself up. You are not becoming selfish. You are becoming whole. And from wholeness, love expands endlessly, like ripples on a pond, touching everyone and everything. Self-love is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. It is the foundation upon which universal love is built. And when universal love blossoms, the world is no longer a place of isolation and fear, but a living, breathing community of beings all connected by the same thread of compassion. 8. Self-love awakens the courage to live authentically. One of the deepest struggles human beings face is the pressure to live according to the expectations of others. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that our worth depends on meeting standards set by family, culture, society, or peers. We are told how we should look, what we should achieve, how we should behave, and even what kind of dreams are acceptable. Over time, many people lose touch with who they truly are. They create masks to fit in, bending themselves into shapes that please others, but suffocate their own spirit. The result is a life lived in quiet conflict, where the outer self and the inner self are at war. And this war is exhausting. It steals joy, drains energy, and leaves people feeling empty no matter how successful they appear on the outside. But when you begin to love yourself, everything changes. Self-love gives you the courage to look inward and ask, who am I really when no one is watching? What do I truly want from life? What values matter most to me? These questions can feel frightening because the answers often challenge the expectations placed upon you, but self-love provides the strength to honor those answers. It tells you that your authenticity is worth protecting, even if it means disappointing others. It reminds you that you cannot live your life as a performance for the world, because a performance may win applause, but it cannot bring peace. Only authenticity can bring peace. Living authentically does not mean rejecting everyone else or refusing to compromise. It means aligning your choices, actions, and words with your true self rather than with fear of judgment. Without self-love, judgment controls you. You stay in jobs you hate, relationships that hurt you, or roles that do not fit you, simply because you are afraid of what others will say if you leave. With self-love, however, judgment loses its power. You no longer need constant approval because you approve of yourself. And once you approve of yourself, living authentically becomes the natural path. Buddhism reminds us that suffering often arises from ignorance of our true nature. We cling to identities, labels, and masks because we are afraid of emptiness, afraid of facing the truth that the self is not fixed. But paradoxically, when you love yourself, you can embrace this impermanence and fluidity with courage. You do not need to force yourself into someone else's mold. You can allow yourself to evolve, to grow, and to change without guilt. Self-love gives you permission to say, "This is who I am today, and tomorrow I may discover even more about myself." Authenticity is not about rigidly holding on to one identity. It is about allowing your inner truth to unfold freely without shame. Think of a tree. A tree does not apologize for shedding leaves in autumn or blossoming in spring. It does not look at other trees and say, "Perhaps I should be thinner, taller, or bloom earlier to be worthy." It simply grows according to its nature, rooted in the soil of its own being. In the same way, self-love allows you to live as you are, rooted in your truth. Without this love, you constantly look to others to tell you if you are good enough. With self-love, you stop asking for permission to exist. You realize that your existence itself is already permission. Living authentically requires courage because the world often resists it. When you stop conforming, some people will criticize you, misunderstand you, or even reject you. But here is the beauty. Self-love softens the sting of rejection because it teaches you that rejection from others is not rejection of your worth. You learn to stand firm in who you are, knowing that not everyone needs to understand or approve. What matters is that you are true to yourself. And the more you live this way, the more you attract people, opportunities, and experiences that align with your authenticity. Instead of chasing validation, you begin to attract resonance. This lesson also shows why self-love is essential for creativity and purpose. Many people silence their dreams because they fear they are not practical enough, acceptable enough, or impressive enough to others. But the greatest contributions to the world, art, music, inventions, discoveries, acts of service, have always come from those who dared to live authentically. When you love yourself, you no longer silence your voice out of fear. You begin to express your truth, share your gifts, and walk the path that feels alive within you. Authenticity becomes not just a personal act of courage, but a gift to the world, because only you can offer what is uniquely yours. It is also worth remembering that authenticity is not about perfection. It is about honesty. When you love yourself, you stop pretending to be flawless. You can admit when you are struggling, when you are vulnerable, when you need help. And this honesty deepens your connections because people sense truth. They may admire perfection, but they connect to authenticity. When you allow yourself to be real, you invite others to be real too. In this way, self-love does not isolate you. It brings you closer to others because relationships built on authenticity are stronger than those built on performance. Buddhism teaches us that the path to liberation is not about becoming someone else. It is about removing the illusions that cover who you already are. Self-love helps peel away those illusions. It quiets the inner critic that says, "You are not enough." It silences the outer voices that demand you conform. It whispers instead, "You are worthy as you are. You have the right to exist as yourself. You have the right to live in alignment with your truth." And when you embrace this, you begin to taste true freedom. Not the freedom of doing whatever you want recklessly, but the freedom of no longer betraying yourself to please others. Imagine the relief of waking up each morning and knowing that you no longer need to wear a mask, no longer need to perform, no longer need to bend under the weight of expectations that do not belong to you. Imagine the peace of simply living as yourself with all your flaws, gifts, quirks, and uniqueness. That peace is what self-love brings. And from that peace, you discover courage. Not the loud courage of fighting battles outside, but the quiet, unshakable courage of living your truth every single day. So remember this, self-love is not just about feeling good inside. It is about giving yourself the strength to live authentically outside. When you truly love yourself, you stop chasing lives that are not yours. You stop hiding behind masks. You stop betraying your soul just to fit in. Instead, you live in a way that is aligned with your deepest truth, and that alignment radiates peace, joy, and freedom. And in doing so, you give the world a rare and precious gift, the gift of your authentic self. 9. Self-love frees you from the illusion of control and teaches surrender. One of the greatest sources of suffering in human life is the endless attempt to control everything. We try to control our relationships, our careers, our families, our health, and even the way others think of us. We cling tightly to plans, expectations, and outcomes, believing that if we can just hold on firmly enough, nothing will slip away. Yet no matter how tightly we grip, life always finds a way to remind us that control is an illusion. People change, circumstances shift, the unexpected arrives without warning. And when this happens, those who lack self-love crumble under the weight of disappointment because they believe that losing control means losing themselves. Buddhism teaches us the principle of impermanence, that everything is always changing, flowing, and transforming. Nothing is fixed, and nothing lasts forever in the form we expect it to. But this truth, while liberating, can also feel terrifying to those who do not love themselves. If you do not love yourself, you tie your identity to outcomes. I am worthy if I succeed. I am valuable if this relationship lasts. I am safe if everything goes according to plan. And when life inevitably disrupts those outcomes, your sense of self shatters. But when you practice self-love, you build an anchor within. You begin to understand that your worth does not depend on circumstances, people, or outcomes. It resides in you. And from this realization comes the ability to surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means releasing the illusion of control and trusting life's natural flow. It means understanding that you cannot force love, you cannot command success, and you cannot hold back the tide of change. Instead, you learn to dance with life, moving with its currents rather than against them. Self-love is what makes this surrender possible, because only when you truly accept yourself can you let go of the desperate need to control how others see you, how things unfold, or what the future brings. Think of a river. If you throw yourself into it and thrash wildly, trying to force the water to flow your way, you will exhaust yourself and may even drown. But if you trust the river and allow yourself to float, you move forward effortlessly. Life is like that river. Without self-love, you thrash, constantly fighting, controlling, fearing. With self-love, you float. You trust that even if the river bends or speeds up, you will still be carried forward. This trust is not blind. It is born from the knowledge that no matter what happens outside, you have a safe refuge inside yourself. Self-love also softens the pain of loss, which is often what drives our need for control. We cling to people or situations because we are afraid that without them, we will be incomplete. But when you love yourself, you realize that nothing outside of you defines your completeness. You can lose a job, and though it hurts, you do not lose your worth. You can lose a relationship, and though it is painful, you do not lose your identity. You can face rejection, failure, or change, and though it shakes you, it does not destroy you. Self-love makes you resilient because it tells you, even when the world changes, I remain whole. Buddhism uses the concept of non-attachment to explain this freedom. Non-attachment does not mean indifference, it means loving fully without clinging. It means enjoying the present moment without chaining it to expectations. When you practice self-love, you naturally move toward non-attachment because you no longer depend on external things to complete you. You can love others deeply, but you do not need to possess them. You can pursue goals passionately, but you do not tie your entire self-worth to their outcome. You can dream, plan, and strive, but when life takes an unexpected turn, you surrender with grace instead of breaking apart. This is perhaps one of the most powerful transformations self-love brings. It shifts your relationship with life itself. Instead of living in constant tension, always bracing against change, always grasping at control, you begin to live with openness. You wake up each day not with fear of what might go wrong, but with curiosity for what may unfold. You stop demanding that life bend to your will, and you begin to align with life's natural rhythm. This is what surrender looks like, not weakness but wisdom. And this wisdom is only possible when you have cultivated enough love for yourself that you no longer fear the unknown. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind rushing around you, the vast horizon stretching endlessly before your eyes. Without self-love, you might be paralyzed with fear, clinging to the rocks, afraid of what could happen if you let go even slightly. But with self-love, you feel the strength within. You trust your footing, you trust the ground beneath you, and you trust the wind to carry you. The cliff is no longer a threat, it is an invitation. In the same way, life is no longer terrifying when you love yourself. It becomes expansive, open, and full of possibilities. Another way self-love teaches surrender is by helping you release the weight of the past. Many people are trapped not just by the illusion of controlling the future, but by the illusion of controlling what has already happened. They replay past mistakes, wishing they could undo them, or they hold on to old resentments, hoping that if they cling tightly enough, they can rewrite history. But the past is gone, unchangeable. To cling to it is to carry a heavy stone on your back while trying to move forward. Self-love allows you to set down that stone. It teaches you that forgiving yourself is not weakness, it is wisdom. By forgiving yourself and letting go of the past, you surrender to the reality of the present. Surrender also transforms how you deal with uncertainty. Without self-love, uncertainty feels unbearable because you do not trust yourself to face what comes. You need control because you fear you cannot handle surprises. But with self-love, uncertainty becomes manageable. You know that whatever comes, you will be able to navigate it because you trust your strength, your resilience, and your ability to adapt. Life's unpredictability no longer feels like a threat. It becomes a teacher. Each twist and turn shows you new sides of yourself, new strengths you did not know you had, and new opportunities for growth. Buddhism often speaks of the middle way, the balance between extremes. Self-love teaches you to walk this path when it comes to control and surrender. You do not become careless, abandoning responsibility for your life, nor do you become obsessive, trying to control every detail. Instead, you live with intention while embracing uncertainty. You plan, but you do not cling to the plan. You love, but you do not chain love with possession. You dream, but you do not attach your worth to outcomes. This balanced surrender is not possible without self-love, because only when you feel safe within yourself can you loosen your grip on the world outside. Letting go of control also allows you to deepen your spiritual connection. When you stop forcing, you make space for flow. You begin to notice synchronicities, moments when life seems to guide you, doors opening at the right time, people appearing when you need them most. These are not accidents, they are the natural result of moving with life instead of against it. Self-love gives you the faith to trust this flow because you no longer believe that you must control everything to be safe. You begin to see life itself as a partner, not an enemy, and this partnership allows you to live with peace instead of constant struggle. The lesson of surrender is not an easy one. It requires daily practice because the human mind is always tempted to grip tightly. But each time you remind yourself to breathe, to release, to trust, you are practicing surrender. And each time you practice surrender, you reinforce your self-love, because surrender is, at its core, an act of trust in yourself. It says, I believe that even if things do not go my way, I will be okay. I believe that I am strong enough to face what comes. I believe that my worth is not tied to outcomes. So remember this truth. Control is an illusion, but surrender is freedom. Self-love is what makes this freedom possible because it teaches you that your value is not fragile, not conditional, not dependent on external circumstances. With self-love, you stop clutching at life in fear and you begin to live with open hands. And with open hands, you are finally able to receive what life has been trying to give you all along: peace, wisdom, and the joy of simply being. Self-love transforms loneliness into peaceful solitude. Loneliness is one of the most painful experiences a human being can go through. It eats away at the heart, whispering that we are unwanted, unseen, or unworthy. It creates a hollow space inside that feels endless, a space that many try to fill with noise, distractions, or unhealthy attachments. People chase relationships not because they are rooted in love, but because they are terrified of being alone. They drown themselves in work, entertainment, or social media, anything that can distract them from sitting quietly with themselves. But no matter how much we try to cover loneliness, the ache remains, Because the root of loneliness is not the absence of others, it is the absence of connection with ourselves. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from misunderstanding, and one of the greatest misunderstandings is equating solitude with loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of disconnection, but solitude is the joy of presence. Loneliness comes from believing you are incomplete and need someone else to complete you, while solitude is the recognition that you are already whole. The bridge between loneliness and solitude is self-love. When you do not love yourself, being alone feels unbearable. But when you cultivate deep self-love, aloneness becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where you can breathe, reflect, and reconnect with life. Why is it that so many people fear being alone? It is because when you are alone, the noise of the world fades, and you are left with the voice of your own mind. If that voice is harsh, critical, and unkind, solitude feels like a prison. But if that voice is gentle, compassionate, and loving, solitude feels like freedom. Self-love changes the voice in your head. It transforms solitude from emptiness into fullness, from fear into peace, from exile into homecoming. Think about this. If you are constantly seeking people to avoid being alone, you are not truly connecting, you are escaping. Your relationships become a way to fill a void rather than to share genuine love. But when you learn to love yourself, you no longer need others to complete you. Instead, you can choose relationships out of joy, not desperation. You can be with others because you want to, not because you are afraid not to. This shift is powerful. It turns love into something pure because it flows from wholeness rather than from fear of loneliness. Buddhism encourages practices like meditation and mindful breathing precisely because they teach us how to be at home with ourselves. In meditation, you sit quietly, doing nothing but observing your breath and thoughts. At first, this feels uncomfortable, even unbearable, because the restless mind resists stillness. But over time, you begin to discover a deep peace that lies beneath the surface noise. This is the heart of solitude, not the absence of people, but the presence of your true self. When you cultivate self-love, meditation becomes less about discipline and more about intimacy. You enjoy being with yourself because you are no longer an enemy to yourself. Let us look at the lotus, one of Buddhism's most beloved symbols. The lotus grows in muddy waters, yet it rises above the mud to bloom in perfect beauty. In the same way, when you embrace solitude with self-love, you rise above the mud of loneliness. You bloom not because you escaped the mud, but because you transformed it. Loneliness becomes the fertile ground from which solitude blossoms. Instead of drowning in emptiness, you learn to rest in fullness. Instead of fearing silence, you learn to hear its music. One of the most freeing truths you discover through self-love is that you are never truly alone. Yes, you may sometimes sit without human company, but you are always connected to life itself. The trees breathe with you, the stars shine above you, the earth supports you beneath your feet. When you sit in solitude with self-love, you begin to feel this connection. You realize that the universe is not indifferent. It is alive, pulsing, and present within you. You are part of the great web of existence, and in that realization, the sharp edges of loneliness soften into belonging. Self-love also allows you to face the fear of abandonment. Many people stay in toxic relationships because they are terrified of being abandoned, believing they cannot survive without the other person. But when you love yourself, abandonment loses its sting. You realize that even if someone leaves, you will not collapse because you are not leaving yourself. This inner loyalty transforms solitude into strength. You know that no matter what happens, you will always have your own presence to rely on. This is why the Buddha taught that true refuge is not outside, it is within. Transforming loneliness into solitude also gives you the gift of creativity and clarity. When you stop running from yourself, you create space for inspiration to arise. The greatest thinkers, artists, and sages throughout history often found their deepest insights in solitude. Why? Because in solitude, free from the constant noise of other voices, the whisper of truth can finally be heard. When you love yourself, solitude no longer feels like a cage. It becomes a wellspring of wisdom. You begin to enjoy your own company, to explore your thoughts, to follow your curiosity. Instead of fearing the silence, you find it fertile. Another gift of solitude born from self-love is that it strengthens relationships. This may sound paradoxical, but it is true. When you depend on others to fill your loneliness, you place a heavy burden on them. They must constantly reassure you, constantly be present, constantly meet needs you cannot meet yourself. This creates strain and resentment. But when you love yourself and enjoy solitude, you bring a different energy into relationships. You no longer cling. You no longer demand constant reassurance. You approach others not as someone desperate to be filled, but as someone already whole, ready to share joy. This creates healthier, freer, and deeper connections. Of course, solitude does not mean isolation. It does not mean cutting yourself off from the world. It means learning to balance time with others and time with yourself. It means understanding that both are necessary. Just as day and night balance each other, so too do solitude and community. When you love yourself, you naturally create this balance. You do not hide from people out of fear, nor do you chase them out of desperation. You flow between solitude and connection with ease, because both feel nourishing instead of frightening. Self-love also helps you face the reality of impermanence in relationships. No matter how much we love someone, there will be times when we are apart, through distance, conflict, or even death. If you have never learned to be at peace with yourself, these moments can feel unbearable. But if you have cultivated self-love and discovered the peace of solitude, you can endure separation with grace. You grieve, yes, but you do not collapse. You miss them, yes, but you do not lose yourself. You remain rooted because your sense of wholeness is not entirely dependent on anyone else. This is one of the most profound freedoms that self-love offers. Imagine sitting under a tree in a quiet garden. The world outside is busy, people rushing here and there, but you sit calmly, breathing, listening to the rustle of leaves. At first you might feel restless, itching to check your phone, wishing for someone to talk to. But as you sit longer, something shifts. You begin to notice details, the way sunlight filters through branches, the rhythm of your breath, the stillness that surrounds you. Slowly, loneliness dissolves, and in its place arises a deep sense of connection, not to another person, but to life itself. This is the heart of solitude, and it is only possible when you approach yourself with love. The transformation from loneliness to solitude is not a one-time event. It is a practice. Some days being alone will still feel heavy, especially if old wounds resurface. But each time you choose to meet yourself with kindness instead of fear, you are strengthening the bridge to solitude. Each time you tell yourself, "I am enough, even here, even now," you are teaching your heart to rest in its own company. Over time, loneliness loses its grip, and solitude becomes a trusted friend. So remember this. Loneliness is not cured by more people. It is healed by more self-love. Solitude is not something to fear. It is something to cherish. When you learn to love yourself deeply, you stop running from silence and you begin to discover its treasures. You realize that you are never truly alone because you always have yourself, and within yourself lives the entire universe. Self-love turns solitude into sanctuary, and in that sanctuary, you find peace that no one can take away. Self-love teaches you to embrace impermanence and find freedom in change. One of the central teachings of Buddhism is impermanence. The truth that nothing lasts forever. Everything is in constant motion, arising, changing, and passing away. The seasons shift, bodies grow old, relationships evolve, opportunities appear and disappear, and even the thoughts in your mind flicker in and out like waves upon the ocean. At first, impermanence may seem frightening. The idea that nothing lasts forever can make us cling more desperately to what we love, fearing that it will slip away. It can make us resist change, holding tightly to routines, identities, or people as though they could remain frozen in time. But no matter how hard we resist, change comes. Impermanence is the law of life, and the question is not whether it will happen. The question is how we will respond to it. When you do not love yourself, impermanence feels like a threat. Every change feels like a loss. Every ending feels like proof of unworthiness, and every transformation feels like something to fear. If a relationship ends, you see it as evidence that you were not enough. If a job shifts, you view it as failure. If your body changes with age, you feel shame. You fight against impermanence as though resisting it will somehow preserve your worth. But the truth is that impermanence is not the enemy. It is the essence of life. The leaves must fall for new buds to grow, night must come for morning to return, and endings must arrive for beginnings to emerge. This is where self-love changes everything. When you cultivate deep love and acceptance for yourself, you begin to see that your worth is not tied to permanence. It is not tied to things staying the same. You realize that no matter how much the outer world changes, your inner dignity, your inner light, remains. This gives you the courage to face impermanence, not with fear, but with openness. You stop clinging desperately, and you start flowing gracefully. You stop saying, "Please don't change," and you start saying, "I trust myself to adapt." Consider the analogy of the butterfly. A caterpillar cannot stay a caterpillar forever. It must enter the cocoon, dissolve into something unrecognizable, and then emerge transformed. To the caterpillar, this might feel like death, an ending. But in truth, it is transformation into something even greater. In the same way, when life pulls you into a cocoon of change, you may feel like everything familiar is dissolving. Without self-love, you panic, believing that the loss of form is the loss of self. But with self-love, you trust the process. You understand that just as the butterfly emerges, so too will you. Self-love gives you the patience to endure the cocoon and the faith to embrace the wings that will follow. One of the deepest pains people experience is the loss of relationships. Whether through breakups, betrayal, distance, or death, people we love eventually leave us in one form or another. Without self-love, this pain can shatter us because we believe that our identity was entirely tied to them. We say, "Without them, I am nothing." But self-love reminds you that while people may come and go, your worth remains. It gives you the ability to grieve deeply without losing yourself. It allows you to honor the impermanence of relationships, recognizing that even if they end, the love shared was real, the lessons gained were valuable, and the growth remains. Instead of clinging, you can release with gratitude because you know you are still whole. Impermanence also shows up in the body. We live in cultures that worship youth and perfection, and so the natural process of aging is often viewed with fear and shame. People fight against wrinkles, gray hair, or slowing bodies as if they were personal failures rather than natural transitions. Without self-love, every change in the mirror becomes a reason for self-criticism. But with self-love, you see aging differently. You understand that your body is not meant to remain frozen. It is meant to tell the story of a life lived. Each wrinkle is a map of laughter and tears, each scar a testament to survival, each gray hair a thread of wisdom. Self-love transforms aging from something to dread into something to honor. You can accept impermanence in the body because you have embraced permanence in the soul. Another way impermanence affects us is through success and failure. Many people tie their self-worth to achievements, believing that as long as they are successful, they are valuable. But success, like everything else, is impermanent. Jobs can be lost, fortunes can fade, reputations can shift overnight. If you do not love yourself, these changes can destroy you because they strip away the external markers of worth. But with self-love, you understand that success does not define you, nor does failure diminish you. You can enjoy achievements when they come and let them go when they pass because your identity is not built on them. Self-love gives you stability amidst the instability of worldly success. Buddhism often compares life to the flow of a river. The water you step into today is not the same water you stepped into yesterday, and it will not be the same tomorrow. Life is a river of constant change. If you try to build a dam and stop the flow, the water becomes stagnant, suffocating the life within it. But if you flow with the river, it nourishes and sustains you. Self-love gives you the courage to flow. Without it, you are terrified of losing control, and so you try to freeze the river. With it, you trust the current, knowing that even if the waters are rough, you will not drown, because you carry strength within you. One of the most liberating truths about impermanence is that it applies not only to joys, but also to pains. Without self-love, suffering feels eternal. A heartbreak feels like it will last forever. A failure feels like the end of everything, but with self-love, you can remind yourself, this too shall pass. You trust that just as joy faded, so too will sorrow. This understanding allows you to endure hardship with patience because you know it is temporary. Self-love acts like a gentle voice saying, yes, this is painful, but you are strong enough to survive it. And one day, this pain will transform into wisdom. Impermanence also brings the gift of presence. When you cling to the past or obsess about the future, you miss the present moment. Without self-love, you live in regret or anxiety, never fully tasting the now. But when you love yourself, you embrace impermanence by cherishing the moment at hand. You know it will not last, and that makes it even more precious. You savor the laughter of a loved one, the warmth of the sun, the stillness of a quiet evening. Self-love trains you to see each moment as a gift, not to be clung to, but to be fully lived. There is also freedom in impermanence because it means nothing is fixed. You are not trapped forever in your mistakes, your pain, or your old identity. Without self-love, you may believe, this is who I am, and I cannot change. But impermanence says otherwise. With self-love, you embrace the truth that you can always grow, always evolve, always begin again. The person you were yesterday does not imprison you today. Each moment is a chance to start anew. Impermanence is not only about endings, it is about beginnings. And self-love allows you to walk into those beginnings with confidence instead of fear. Let us reflect on this. Every flower that blooms will eventually wilt. But does that make its bloom meaningless? No, it makes it even more beautiful because its beauty is fleeting. In the same way, every moment of your life is precious because it will not last forever. Self-love helps you embrace this truth without despair. Instead of lamenting impermanence, you celebrate it because it teaches you to live fully now. You stop clinging to what was or anxiously grasping for what will be. You rest in what is, and in that rest, you find peace. So how do we practice embracing impermanence with self-love? We begin by reminding ourselves daily that change is not loss, it is transformation. We treat ourselves gently when change comes, whether it is joyful or painful. We allow ourselves to grieve endings without losing hope. We honor the past, but we do not chain ourselves to it. We prepare for the future, but we do not depend on it for our worth. We live in the present because we understand it is the only moment that is truly real. Self-love is the anchor that allows us to navigate this constant flow without fear. In the end, impermanence is not something to fight. It is something to embrace. It is the reason flowers bloom, seasons turn, and life evolves. It is the reason your soul grows, because without change, there would be no growth. And when you love yourself, you can trust that no matter what changes come, you will remain whole, you will remain worthy, and you will remain strong. Remember this: impermanence is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It teaches you to cherish the present, to release the past, and to trust the future. It teaches you that nothing is fixed, and therefore everything is possible. And with self-love, you can embrace this truth not with fear, but with freedom. You learn to flow with life instead of clinging, to welcome change instead of resisting, and to find peace in the ever-shifting dance of existence. Self-love teaches you to stop seeking validation and find strength within. One of the most subtle yet powerful forms of suffering that shapes human life is the endless craving for validation. From the time we are children, we are conditioned to seek approval from the world around us. We want our parents' praise, our teachers' recognition, our peers' acceptance. As adults, the craving becomes even louder. We measure our worth by the number of compliments we receive, the success we display, the followers or likes on a screen, or the recognition we gain from careers and relationships. And while external validation can bring momentary joy, it is never enough. Like drinking salt water, the more we consume, the thirstier we become. Buddhism teaches us that craving is one of the root causes of suffering. Craving for wealth, craving for pleasure, craving for recognition, all of these keep us chained, restless, and dissatisfied. When you live for validation, your sense of self becomes fragile. One harsh word from another person can shatter your confidence. One failure can convince you that you are worthless. One moment of being overlooked can send you spiraling into self-doubt. Your worth becomes like a feather in the wind, blown in whatever direction the world chooses. This is why self-love is so vital. When you love yourself deeply, you begin to free yourself from the constant hunger for external validation. You realize that your worth is not something the world gives you. It is something you already possess by virtue of being alive. You do not need someone to tell you that you are valuable in order for it to be true. Self-love teaches you to look inward instead of outward, to find strength within instead of begging for it from outside. Let us imagine two people. The first does not love themselves. They live each day waiting for others to notice them. If they receive a compliment, they feel worthy for a moment. If they are criticized, they collapse. Their happiness is entirely at the mercy of others. The second person, however, has cultivated self-love. They appreciate compliments, but they do not depend on them. They accept criticism, but they do not define themselves by it. They walk through the world with quiet confidence, because their worth is rooted within. This is the difference between living enslaved to validation and living free through self-love. Think of a tree. A tree does not need the world to tell it that it is worthy of standing. It does not ask the passing birds or people for approval before it grows tall. Its roots go deep into the earth, and from that depth it draws strength. Your self-love is like those roots. Without it, you are easily uprooted by the storms of opinion. With it, you stand firm, regardless of whether others applaud or ignore you. One of the greatest illusions we carry is the belief that if enough people approve of us, we will finally feel whole. But how many times have you been praised or admired, only to feel the emptiness return shortly after? External validation cannot fill the inner void, because the void is not caused by a lack of approval, but by a lack of self-love. Until you turn inward, and embrace yourself fully, no amount of applause will ever satisfy you. And when you do embrace yourself, you discover something profound. You no longer need applause to feel alive. Self-love also transforms how you respond to criticism. Without self-love, criticism feels like an attack on your very existence. A single negative comment can destroy your peace because you secretly believe it is true. But with self-love, criticism becomes easier to hold. You can examine it calmly. Is this criticism useful? Can I learn something from it? If yes, you take the lesson. If not, you let it go. Either way, it does not wound your soul because your worth is not on trial. Self-love is like armor, not the kind that makes you hard or distant, but the kind that makes you resilient and grounded. The search for validation often keeps people trapped in toxic patterns. They stay in unhealthy relationships because they crave love, even if it comes with pain. They overwork themselves to exhaustion because they crave recognition, even if it costs their health. They pretend to be someone they are not, because they crave acceptance, even if it means betraying themselves. But when you love yourself, these patterns begin to break. You no longer beg for love from those who mistreat you because you know you are already lovable. You no longer sacrifice your well-being for recognition because you know your worth does not depend on achievements. You no longer wear masks to gain acceptance because you accept yourself as you are. This lesson is deeply tied to authenticity. When you stop living for validation, you gain the freedom to live for truth. You can finally ask, what do I want? Not what do others expect of me? What feels right in my soul? Not what will earn me approval. Self-love gives you the courage to choose authenticity over approval. And in the end, authenticity attracts far deeper connections than validation ever could. People may admire the masks you wear, but they only truly love the person you are when you remove them. It is important to understand that seeking validation is not inherently evil. It is a natural human tendency. We all want to feel seen, appreciated, and valued. The problem arises when it becomes the foundation of our worth. Self-love does not mean rejecting all external validation. It means not depending on it. You can enjoy praise when it comes, but you do not crumble when it doesn't. You can appreciate recognition, but you do not chase it desperately. Self-love allows you to remain steady whether the world claps or stays silent. Buddhism often speaks of equanimity, the ability to remain balanced in pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. Self-love is what makes equanimity possible in the realm of validation. When you love yourself, praise does not inflate your ego and criticism does not crush your spirit. You remain balanced because you are anchored in a deeper truth. Your worth is inherent, unshakable, and not dependent on external voices. Let us also reflect on how much energy is wasted in the pursuit of validation. People twist themselves into shapes to please others, saying yes when they want to say no, hiding their true selves, sacrificing their dreams, all in the hope of being accepted. But the acceptance they gain is shallow because it is not acceptance of their true self, but of the mask they wear. Self-love liberates you from this exhausting cycle. It tells you do not need to exhaust yourself proving your worth. You are already worthy. And when you truly believe this, you conserve your energy for things that matter: growth, love, creativity, service. One of the most powerful shifts that comes from self-love is the realization that the validation you were searching for outside has always been available inside, that the voice you were waiting to hear, the one that says you are enough, can come from within you. And when it does, it is far more stable, far more reliable than any applause from the world. The world's approval may come and go, but your inner approval can remain steady. This is what it means to find strength within. Imagine standing on a stage, the spotlight shining on you. Without self-love, you tremble, waiting for the audience to clap, believing that their reaction defines your worth. With self-love, you stand tall, regardless of the applause. You know that your worth is not determined by the audience, but by the fact that you dared to stand there, to be yourself, to live authentically. This is the power of self-love. It frees you from dependence on the crowd. So how do we practice this lesson? Begin by noticing when you are acting out of a need for validation. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it feels true to me, or because I want someone else's approval? If it is the latter, pause, turn inward, remind yourself of your worth. Speak kindly to yourself as you would to a dear friend. Over time, this practice rewires your mind. The desperate craving for validation softens, and the steady voice of inner love grows louder. In the end, self-love teaches you this profound truth. Validation is fleeting, but self-acceptance is eternal. Applause fades, recognition shifts, opinions change. But the love you cultivate for yourself remains, anchoring you through every storm. When you stop seeking validation and find strength within, you no longer live as a prisoner of others' opinions. You live as a free being, walking your path with confidence, authenticity, and peace. Remember this: you do not need to be approved to be worthy. You do not need to be praised to be valuable. You do not need to be validated to be whole. You are already enough as you are in this moment. And when you finally believe that, when you finally love yourself enough to stop begging the world for scraps of approval, you discover a strength so profound that nothing can shake it. That strength is the gift of self-love, and it is the foundation upon which true freedom is built. Self-love teaches you to forgive yourself and break free from guilt. There are few chains heavier than the weight of guilt. It sits in the mind like a stone, dragging down every thought, coloring every decision, and robbing the heart of peace. Guilt comes when we replay past mistakes, choices, or failures, and believe that they permanently define us. It whispers, "You should have done better. You ruined everything. You don't deserve happiness." Some people carry this burden for years, even decades, punishing themselves long after the world has moved on. And yet, Buddhism teaches us that clinging to guilt is itself a form of suffering, a chain we choose to hold even though it is cutting into our hands. Why do we cling to guilt? Often it is because we confuse guilt with responsibility. We believe that if we stop feeling guilty, it means we do not care about the harm we caused or the mistake we made. We think guilt is the proof of our morality. But this is a misunderstanding. Responsibility and guilt are not the same. Responsibility is the willingness to face our actions honestly, learn from them, and repair what can be repaired. Guilt, however, is self-punishment. It paralyzes instead of heals. Responsibility looks forward, guilt looks backward. Responsibility transforms, guilt stagnates. Without self-love, it is nearly impossible to escape this cycle. When you do not love yourself, your mistakes become the whole story of who you are. You replay them endlessly because you secretly believe you deserve the punishment. You wear guilt like armor, thinking it protects others from being hurt by you again, when in truth it only cuts you off from growth, connection, and healing. But when you cultivate self-love, something powerful happens. You begin to see that your mistakes do not erase your worth. They do not cancel out your humanity. They are part of your journey, but they are not the whole journey. Self-love gives you the courage to face your past without being destroyed by it. Let us consider the example of a broken vase. Imagine you accidentally drop a vase that belonged to someone you care about. Without self-love, you might spend the rest of your life staring at the shattered pieces, replaying the moment it slipped from your hand, punishing yourself for your carelessness. But the vase will never be whole again by staring at the shards. With self-love, however, you accept the reality of what happened. You apologize sincerely, you learn to be more careful in the future, and you let go of the guilt. You may even take the pieces and repair them with golden glue, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold to highlight its cracks rather than hide them. In the same way, self-love allows you to turn your mistakes into wisdom, your scars into beauty, and your guilt into growth. Buddhism offers many practices for releasing guilt, and one of the most powerful is compassion. Just as you would comfort a child who made a mistake, you must learn to comfort yourself. If a friend came to you in tears, confessing a failure, would you condemn them endlessly? Or would you remind them that they are still worthy, still capable of growth, still deserving of love? If you can offer that kindness to others, why not to yourself? Self-love is the recognition that you are not excluded from compassion. The same gentleness you extend outward must also be extended inward. One of the deepest truths about guilt is that it locks us in the past. We cannot change what has already happened. We cannot undo words spoken, actions taken, or paths chosen. But what we can change is how we respond now. Without self-love, guilt keeps us chained to what is unchangeable, wasting our energy in endless self-punishment. With self-love, you recognize that while you cannot rewrite the past, you can write the future. Forgiving yourself does not erase the mistake, but it allows you to grow from it, and that growth is the true form of redemption. It is also important to see that guilt often arises from unrealistic expectations of perfection. Many people carry guilt not because they committed great wrongs, but because they fell short of impossible standards. They punish themselves for being human, for getting tired, for failing sometimes, for not always knowing the right thing to do. But perfection is an illusion. As the Buddha taught, all beings are on the path of learning, stumbling, and evolving. To expect yourself to be flawless is to deny your humanity. Self-love helps you accept your imperfection with grace. It whispers, you are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are still worthy. Another layer of guilt that self-love helps dissolve is inherited guilt, the guilt passed down by culture, family, or society. Many people carry shame for not living up to others' expectations, even when those expectations were never aligned with their true selves. They feel guilty for choosing a different career, for leaving a relationship, for setting boundaries, for prioritizing their own well-being. But this guilt is not rooted in wrongdoing. It is rooted in fear of disapproval. Self-love gives you the courage to release this weight. It reminds you that your life is your own, and living in alignment with your truth is not a crime. Forgiving yourself does not mean avoiding accountability. On the contrary, self-love makes accountability possible. When you stop drowning in guilt, you can finally take clear, meaningful action to make amends where possible. You can apologize sincerely without self-hatred distorting your words. You can repair damage done without collapsing into despair. You can transform guilt into growth, responsibility, and wisdom. Self-love does not excuse harmful actions. It empowers you to heal them. Let us return to the image of the lotus. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet it rises above the mud to bloom in purity. Your mistakes are the mud. Without them, growth would be impossible because there would be no soil for the lotus to rise from. Guilt keeps you stuck in the mud, staring at the darkness. Self-love lifts you above it, showing you that the mud is not your prison. It is your foundation. It is the very thing that nourishes your growth, if you allow it. There is also a spiritual dimension to forgiving yourself. Buddhism teaches that clinging to guilt is a form of attachment to an identity of failure, attachment to the past. This attachment prevents liberation. When you forgive yourself, you are not erasing responsibility. You are letting go of the attachment that chains you. You are saying, I am not my past. I am not my mistakes. I am more than that. I am a being capable of growth, compassion, and awakening. This shift is transformative. It releases you from the prison of self-condemnation and allows you to walk freely on the path of healing. So how do we practice this forgiveness in daily life? It begins with awareness. Notice when guilt arises, and instead of drowning in it, pause. Ask yourself, is this guilt helping me grow, or is it keeping me trapped? If it is helping you learn, transform it into responsibility and action. If it is only punishing you, practice releasing it. Speak to yourself kindly. I made a mistake, but I am learning. I am still worthy. I choose growth over punishment. Over time, these gentle reminders begin to soften the chains of guilt. You may also find it powerful to write a letter of forgiveness to yourself. Write as though you are both the one seeking forgiveness and the one granting it. Acknowledge the mistakes honestly, but then speak words of compassion. I forgive you for not knowing better. I forgive you for being human. I forgive you because you deserve peace. This practice can be profoundly healing because it allows you to hear the words you have been longing for, words of release, spoken by your own heart. In the end, guilt is a weight that no one can carry forever. If you cling to it, it will crush you. But if you release it, you will discover lightness you may not have felt in years. Forgiving yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Because when you heal yourself, you become more capable of healing the world. When you stop punishing yourself, you stop spreading punishment. When you embrace compassion within, you radiate it outward. Remember this truth. You are not defined by your worst moments. You are not the sum of your mistakes. You are a human being on a journey of learning, and every step, even the missteps, are part of the path. Self-love is the key that unlocks the prison of guilt. It teaches you to forgive yourself, not because you have forgotten the past, but because you have chosen to grow from it. And in that forgiveness, you find freedom, peace, and the courage to keep walking forward. Self-love teaches you patience with your journey. In a world that glorifies speed, achievement, and instant results, patience has become one of the rarest virtues. We live in a culture of urgency. People want success immediately, healing without time, love without effort, and transformation without struggle. The moment progress feels slow, frustration arises. The moment results are delayed, despair sets in, and beneath all this impatience lies a deep wound. The inability to love oneself enough to walk the journey with gentleness. When you do not love yourself, you demand perfection too quickly. You scold yourself for not being farther ahead. You measure yourself against others, wondering why their journey seems faster, brighter, or easier. This constant self-pressure creates suffering because growth never unfolds on command. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life has its own natural rhythm. A seed does not bloom into a tree overnight. Rain falls when it must, and the sun rises when it is time. Trying to rush the process only leads to exhaustion. Yet human beings often demand of themselves what they would never demand of nature. Imagine shouting at a flower, "Hurry, bloom now. Why are you still a bud?" Such demands would be absurd. But this is exactly what we do to ourselves when we lack self-love. We scold, we rush, we push, forgetting that our inner growth has seasons of its own. Self-love teaches you to be patient with your journey. It reminds you that you are not a machine to be perfected, but a living being unfolding in time. When you love yourself, you no longer treat delays as failures. Instead, you see them as part of the path. You stop measuring yourself by how fast you move and start appreciating that you are moving at all. You recognize that true transformation happens slowly, like water carving valleys or wind shaping mountains. It cannot be rushed, and it does not need to be. Without self-love, patience feels impossible because impatience is rooted in self-rejection. If you do not love yourself, you cannot tolerate your own imperfections. You want to erase them quickly to escape the discomfort of being unfinished. You look at others who seem ahead and punish yourself for being behind. But when you practice self-love, you learn to sit with yourself as you are. You tell yourself, it is okay that I am still growing. It is okay that I am not there yet. I do not need to rush my becoming. This gentleness creates space for patience. Consider the story of the bamboo tree. For years after planting, the bamboo does not appear to grow above the soil. Day after day, it seems as though nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, roots are spreading deep and wide, building a foundation strong enough to support incredible growth. Then, in one season, the bamboo suddenly shoots upward, growing feet in just weeks. Many people are like the bamboo tree. They work quietly, building inner strength, healing old wounds, learning lessons that may not be visible to others. Without patience, they may despair, thinking nothing is happening. But with self-love, they understand that even the invisible growth matters. They trust that their moment to rise will come, and when it does, it will be powerful. Patience with your journey also means embracing setbacks. Progress is rarely linear. Some days you feel like you are soaring forward. Other days you feel like you have fallen backward. Without self-love, setbacks feel like proof of failure. You scold yourself harshly. Why am I still struggling? Why can't I get it right? But self-love reframes setbacks as part of the learning curve. You remind yourself that stumbling is not the end of the journey. It is the journey. Every time you fall, you learn something new about balance. Every time you falter, you discover new strength. Patience allows you to continue walking, step by step, without despair. Buddhism often uses the metaphor of waves and the ocean. Some days the waves are calm, some days they are stormy. But beneath the surface, the ocean remains vast and steady. Your journey is like this. On the surface, progress may appear inconsistent with ups and downs. But beneath, your soul remains steady, growing slowly but surely. Self-love teaches you to identify not with the restless surface, but with the depth beneath. This perspective brings patience, because you know that storms are temporary, but growth is enduring. One of the greatest lessons self-love offers is that you do not need to arrive to be worthy. Many people treat patience as a waiting game, believing they will only be worthy once they reach the destination. But self-love reminds you that you are worthy even in the middle of the process. You are worthy as the seed, as the sprout, as the bud, and as the bloom. Every stage has its own beauty, and every stage deserves kindness. When you love yourself, you stop rushing to arrive and start honoring where you are. Patience with your journey also helps you let go of comparison. Without self-love, you look at others and despair. They are already successful. They are already healed. They are already happy. Why am I still struggling? But self-love reminds you that everyone's timeline is different. Just as not all flowers bloom in spring, some bloom in summer, some in autumn, so too does each person's path unfold uniquely. Your season will come when it is meant to. There is no need to rush and no need to compare. Let us imagine a traveler climbing a mountain. Without patience, the traveler grows restless, constantly asking, "Are we there yet? How much longer? Why is it taking so long?" This restlessness makes the journey miserable. But with patience, the traveler walks steadily, appreciating the scenery, resting when needed, trusting that the summit will appear in time. Self-love turns you into the second traveler. You stop punishing yourself for not being at the top, and you start appreciating each step. You realize that the journey itself is part of the reward. Another way self-love cultivates patience is by helping you embrace uncertainty. Impatience often comes from fear of the unknown. We want quick answers, immediate results, clear outcomes. But life rarely works that way. Growth is mysterious, often invisible, until one day it suddenly blooms. Without self-love, this mystery feels unbearable. With self-love, you can sit in the unknown with trust. You tell yourself, even if I cannot see it yet, I am growing. Even if the path is unclear, I am moving forward. This trust creates the space for patience. Patience also applies to healing. Many carry wounds, emotional, mental, spiritual, that cannot be erased overnight. Without self-love, they demand instant healing, and when it does not come, they sink into despair. But self-love whispers, healing takes time. Be gentle with yourself. Do not rush what must unfold slowly. Just as a broken bone needs weeks to mend, so too do broken hearts and minds. Patience allows healing to happen naturally at its own pace. There is also a profound connection between patience and mindfulness. Impatience always pulls you into the future. I should be there by now. Why am I still here? But mindfulness roots you in the present. I am here now, and this moment is valuable. Self-love supports mindfulness because when you love yourself, you no longer treat the present as a mistake. You embrace it as part of the path. Each step becomes meaningful, each breath becomes sacred, and each moment becomes enough. Ultimately, patience with your journey is an act of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in life, and trust in the unfolding of the universe. Without self-love, this trust feels impossible. You believe you must control everything, rush everything, and fix everything. But with self-love, you learn to surrender. You trust that your journey is unfolding exactly as it needs to, that every step, fast or slow, is guiding you to where you are meant to be. So remember this: your growth cannot be rushed, your healing cannot be forced, your transformation cannot be demanded. Everything takes the time it needs. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you need to be. Self-love teaches you to embrace this truth with patience. It allows you to rest when you are tired, to rise when you are ready, and to walk at your own pace without shame. Patience is not waiting idly. It is walking steadily with trust. And when you walk with patience, guided by self-love, you discover a peace that rushing can never give. You realize that the journey itself is the destination, and in that realization, you find freedom. Self-love teaches you to release fear and live with courage. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in human life. It hides in the corners of the mind, whispering doubts, magnifying risks, and convincing us to stay small. It tells us not to try, not to speak, not to love, not to dream. Fear wears many masks. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of change, fear of loss, even fear of success. And beneath all these fears lies the same root: the belief that we are not enough to handle what may come. Buddhism teaches that fear arises from attachment and ignorance. We cling to illusions of security, permanence, and control, and when life threatens these illusions, fear appears. We fear because we do not understand the true nature of reality, that change is inevitable, that control is an illusion, and that security is never guaranteed. Instead of living freely, we live cautiously, guarding ourselves from imagined dangers, avoiding risks that might bring growth, and confining our souls to safe, predictable cages. Without self-love, fear grows louder because you have no anchor within. You doubt your ability to survive difficulties, to recover from mistakes, to endure loss. You place your worth outside yourself, on approval, possessions, or outcomes, and so you live in constant terror of losing them. Fear convinces you that you must shrink, hide, and conform because you believe you are too fragile to face life as it is. But when you cultivate self-love, something shifts profoundly. Self-love gives you the courage to face fear, not by denying it, but by embracing it with compassion. When you love yourself, you trust yourself. You believe that no matter what challenges arise, you have the strength to endure. You stop living as though every risk is the end of the world, because you know that even if you stumble, you will rise again. Fear loses its grip when love enters, because love tells you, you are enough, you are capable, you are safe within yourself. Let us imagine a bird in a cage. The cage door is open, but the bird does not fly, because it fears the vast sky outside. It has lived so long in confinement that freedom feels terrifying. Without self-love, we are like that bird. We keep ourselves locked in cages of fear, even when the door is open. But with self-love, we begin to trust our wings. We realize that yes, the sky is vast and uncertain, but we were born to fly. And even if we falter, the sky itself will hold us. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. Even the Buddha, before enlightenment, faced Mara, the personification of fear, doubt, and temptation. Courage means meeting fear without letting it control you. It means acting even when your heart trembles. Self-love fuels this courage because it gives you the strength to say, even if I fail, I am still worthy. Even if I am rejected, I am still enough. Even if I lose, I will not lose myself. Think of all the opportunities lost because of fear. How many dreams remain unlived? How many words unspoken? How many connections missed because someone was too afraid to take a step? Fear convinces us that safety lies in avoidance, but in truth, avoidance only deepens regret. Self-love helps you break this cycle. It whispers, your dreams matter, your voice matters, your life is worth living fully. With this foundation, you find the courage to step forward, even when fear lingers. One of the greatest fears humans face is the fear of rejection. We long to be accepted, to belong, and so we often silence ourselves, mold ourselves, or hide parts of ourselves to avoid rejection. But when you love yourself, rejection no longer feels like death. You understand that if someone does not accept you, it does not erase your worth. You can walk away without crumbling because you are already embraced by your own love. This freedom transforms relationships. You no longer cling in desperation. You connect authentically because fear of rejection no longer dictates your choices. Another common fear is the fear of failure. Many people never attempt their true dreams because they are terrified of failing. They imagine humiliation, disappointment, or ruin, and so they remain stuck in safe, unfulfilling paths. But failure is not the end, it is the teacher. Every master was once a beginner, stumbling, falling, and learning. Self-love allows you to approach failure not as proof of unworthiness, but as part of the process. It tells you, even if I fail, I am still valuable. Even if I fall, I can rise. With this courage, failure becomes less frightening, and you begin to take risks that bring growth. Buddhism often speaks of fear as an illusion, a story created by the mind. The future is unknown, yet the mind imagines disasters and clings to them as though they are certain. In reality, most fears never come true, and even when difficulties do arise, they are rarely as catastrophic as we imagined. Self-love helps you step out of this illusion. It grounds you in the present moment, reminding you that right now you are safe, alive, and capable. Fear shrinks when you return to the present because love fills the space where worry once lived. Another profound fear is the fear of change. People cling to the familiar even when it causes suffering because the unknown feels scarier than the pain they already know. They stay in jobs that drain them, relationships that harm them, or habits that suffocate them, simply because change feels too frightening. But change is the essence of life, and resisting it only prolongs suffering. Self-love gives you the courage to embrace change because you trust your ability to adapt. You understand that you do not need certainty to move forward. You only need faith in yourself. The fear of death is perhaps the deepest of all fears. It underlies many other anxieties, the fear of loss, the fear of endings, the fear of impermanence. Buddhism teaches us that death is not the enemy. It is the natural counterpart of life. Everything that arises will pass. Self-love helps you face this truth with serenity because it teaches you to cherish the life you have, to live fully in each moment, and to trust that your essence, your love, your consciousness, your presence cannot be erased. Courage grows when you stop fearing death and start embracing life. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean. Fear tells you, do not step in. The waves will swallow you. Without self-love, you believe the voice, and you retreat to the shore, never knowing what it feels like to swim. With self-love, you take a step into the water, heart pounding but steady. You realize that while the waves are powerful, so are you. You learn to float, to swim, to dance with the sea. This is what self-love does. It gives you the courage to step into the ocean of life, trusting that you can handle whatever waves come your way. So how do we release fear through self-love? First, by acknowledging fear instead of denying it. Pretending fear does not exist only gives it more power. Self-love allows you to say, yes, I am afraid, but I still choose to act. Second, by speaking kindly to yourself when fear arises. Instead of calling yourself weak, remind yourself of your courage. Third, by taking small steps. Courage is built like muscle. Each time you face a fear, even in small ways, you strengthen your inner resilience. Over time, fear shrinks and courage expands. It is also important to surround yourself with compassion when fear arises. Meditation, journaling, and mindful breathing can help calm the nervous system, reminding you that fear is not permanent. Connecting with nature can also restore perspective. Just as trees sway with storms and rivers carve through rock, so too can you endure challenges. Self-love makes these practices more powerful because it adds the layer of kindness. You are not battling fear as an enemy, but embracing it as part of your humanity. In the end, self-love transforms fear into fuel. It does not eliminate uncertainty, but it gives you the courage to face it. It does not remove risk, but it gives you the strength to take it. It does not prevent loss, but it gives you resilience to survive it. Self-love reminds you that courage is not about never being afraid. It is about moving forward even when you are. So remember this. Fear will always exist, but it does not need to control you. You are stronger than the stories in your mind. You are more capable than you believe. And when you love yourself deeply, you discover a well of courage that fear cannot touch. Self-love is the hand that steadies you, the voice that reassures you, the light that guides you through the shadows. With it, you can step boldly into the unknown, live authentically, and embrace life with open arms. Self-love teaches you gratitude for the present moment. Human beings spend much of their lives running. From the past they cannot change, and toward the future they cannot control. We dwell in regrets, replaying mistakes, wishing we had done things differently. Or we dwell in anxiety, worrying about what might happen, clinging to imagined futures where we are finally good enough, finally happy, finally at peace. But in this endless chase, one thing is forgotten: the present moment. And yet, the present moment is the only place where life actually exists. The past is memory. The future is imagination. Only now is real. Buddhism teaches this truth with great clarity. The Buddha often spoke about mindfulness, the art of being fully present, awake, and aware of this moment. When we live mindlessly, lost in regrets and worries, we suffer unnecessarily. But when we return to the present with gratitude, life reveals its richness. The breath becomes sacred. A smile becomes precious. A sip of water becomes holy. Gratitude transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary gifts. But here is the challenge. Without self-love, gratitude is hard to practice. If you do not love yourself, the present moment often feels unbearable. You criticize yourself for not being enough, and so you cannot rest in now. You tell yourself, I'll be grateful when I succeed, when I change, when I prove my worth. Gratitude is always postponed into the future because you cannot accept yourself in the present. This is why so many people chase life endlessly. They do not believe this moment is enough because they do not believe they are enough. Self-love changes this entirely. When you love yourself, you stop postponing joy. You stop waiting for a better version of yourself to deserve gratitude. You begin to see that even in your imperfection, this moment is worthy of love. You breathe and you are grateful for the breath. You sit and you are grateful for the stillness. You live and you are grateful for life itself. Self-love grounds you in the present because it tells you you are enough now. This moment is enough now. Think of a child playing in a garden. The child is not worrying about yesterday or fretting about tomorrow. They are simply absorbed in the joy of now, the butterfly, the flower, the sunshine on their face. Their laughter is free because they are present. This is the natural state of the human heart. But as we grow, fear, shame, and self-criticism steal it from us. We stop living like children and start living like prisoners of time. Self-love is the key that unlocks this prison. It gives us permission to return to the simplicity of now, to see life not as a problem to solve, but as a gift to savor. Gratitude, when rooted in self-love, becomes more than a polite thank you. It becomes a way of seeing. You no longer wait for grand events to feel thankful. Instead, you notice the small things, the way light spills across the floor, the sound of rain tapping on the window, the warmth of tea in your hands. These details, often overlooked, reveal life's quiet beauty. Without self-love, your mind races past them, searching for bigger, louder, better reasons to be happy. With self-love, you slow down and see that happiness was always here, waiting to be noticed. Buddhism uses the metaphor of the miracle of walking on the earth. Many people believe miracles are rare, supernatural events. But the Buddha said the true miracle is to walk on this earth fully awake, to feel the ground beneath your feet, to be present with each step, to recognize the miracle of simply being alive. Gratitude is this awakening. Self-love makes it possible because when you love yourself, you no longer rush past your life. You walk more slowly, more mindfully, savoring the miracle of being here at all. One of the greatest obstacles to gratitude is comparison. When you look at others and believe they have more success, more love, more beauty, you overlook your own blessings. You say, I'll be grateful when I have what they have. But comparison is endless, and so gratitude never arrives. Self-love ends this cycle. It reminds you that your life is not meant to look like anyone else's. You do not need what they have to be whole. You already have enough. You already are enough. With this shift, gratitude becomes natural because you stop measuring your life against someone else's scale. Another obstacle to gratitude is the belief that only the good moments deserve thanks. People say, I'll be grateful when I'm successful, when I'm healthy, when I'm happy. But life is not only joy, it is also struggle. Without self-love, struggle feels like proof of failure, and so you cannot be grateful in hard times. But with self-love, even difficulties become opportunities for gratitude. You learn to say, thank you for the challenge because it teaches me strength. Thank you for the loss because it teaches me love. Thank you for the pain because it awakens compassion. Gratitude, when rooted in self-love, embraces all of life, not just the easy parts. Imagine holding a bowl of water in your hands. If your hands are trembling with self-hatred, the water spills and you cannot enjoy it. But if your hands are steady with self-love, you can hold it gently, noticing its coolness, its clarity, its gift. Life is like that bowl of water. Self-love steadies your hands so you can receive it fully. Gratitude flows naturally when you hold life with gentleness instead of judgment. There is also a profound connection between gratitude and healing. Many people believe they cannot be grateful until they are fully healed. But often, gratitude itself is what heals. When you begin to notice what is good, even in the midst of pain, your mind and heart soften. You shift from scarcity to abundance, from despair to possibility. Self-love amplifies this healing because it removes the voice that says, "You don't deserve to be grateful until you are perfect." Instead, it says, "You deserve gratitude now because you are alive now." Gratitude also strengthens relationships. Without self-love, you may constantly seek from others approval, attention, reassurance, without appreciating what they already give. You take love for granted because you are too focused on what you lack. With self-love, however, you begin to appreciate others more deeply. You recognize their kindness, their presence, their efforts. Gratitude deepens connection, and self-love makes that gratitude possible because you are no longer blinded by scarcity. One of the most beautiful aspects of gratitude is that it multiplies what it touches. When you love yourself and practice gratitude, even small joys feel abundant. A simple meal feels like a feast. A moment of silence feels like peace. A kind word feels like treasure. Without gratitude, nothing is enough. With gratitude, everything is enough. This is the alchemy of self-love and mindfulness. They turn ordinary life into sacred life. Buddhism often teaches the practice of mindful breathing, simply being aware of your breath, in and out. At first, this may seem too simple to matter, but in truth, it is profound. To be grateful for one breath is to be grateful for life itself, because breath is the foundation of living. Self-love makes this practice transformative because it allows you to say, "This breath is enough. I am enough." And when you truly feel this, even for a moment, peace fills you. So how do we cultivate gratitude through self-love? Start small. Each day, pause and notice 3 things you are grateful for. Not grand achievements, but simple gifts. The warmth of sunlight, the taste of food, the sound of laughter. Then, extend gratitude inward. Thank yourself for surviving, for trying, for showing up, even when life is hard. Over time, these practices train your mind to return to the present with love instead of criticism. It is also helpful to reframe difficult moments. When something goes wrong, instead of immediately lamenting, pause and ask, "What is this teaching me? How is this shaping me?" Gratitude does not mean denying pain. It means finding meaning within it. Self-love supports this by preventing self-blame. Instead of saying, "This is happening because I'm unworthy," you say, "This is happening and I am still worthy, and I can still find gratitude within it." In the end, gratitude is not about waiting for perfect conditions. It is about awakening to the gifts already here. Self-love teaches you to see those gifts because it quiets the voice of lack and amplifies the voice of abundance. It reminds you that every moment is precious, that even your breath is a miracle, and that your very existence is worthy of thanks. Remember this. Life is not waiting to give you joy in the future. It is offering joy now, in each moment, if only you pause to see it. Self-love opens your eyes to this truth. It transforms impatience into presence, scarcity into abundance, and restlessness into peace. And with gratitude, your life becomes not a race to somewhere else, but a celebration of where you are. Self-love teaches you to let go of control and trust the flow of life. One of the greatest sources of human suffering is the constant attempt to control life. We want things to unfold according to our plans, people to behave according to our expectations, and outcomes to match our desires. When life cooperates, we feel at ease. When it doesn't, we suffer. This obsession with control is natural It arises from the mind's need for certainty, safety, and stability. But it is also exhausting because life cannot be controlled. No matter how much we plan, predict, or prepare, change will come, people will surprise us, and outcomes will often differ from what we imagined. Buddhism teaches us that clinging is the root of suffering. Clinging to pleasure, clinging to permanence, clinging to control, these are the habits that bind us. The more we cling, the more anxious we become, because life will never obey our grasp. Trying to control reality is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. And yet, many people live their entire lives in this struggle, tightening their grip, exhausting themselves in a battle they cannot win. Without self-love, this need for control becomes even more desperate. When you do not trust yourself, you cannot trust life. You believe that unless you manipulate every detail, everything will collapse. You fear uncertainty because you secretly believe you are not strong enough to handle it. And so you try to manage, predict, and control not only your own path, but also the paths of others. This creates tension in relationships, stress in daily life, and deep inner restlessness. But when you cultivate self-love, you begin to release this grip. Self-love teaches you that you do not need to control everything in order to be safe, because your safety comes from within. It reminds you that no matter what happens, you will not abandon yourself. You will care for yourself through storms, adapt to changes, and meet uncertainty with resilience. With this inner foundation, you stop clinging desperately to control and start trusting the natural flow of life. Imagine a river flowing through a valley. Without self-love, you are like someone standing in the middle of the river, trying to push the water backward with your hands. The current is too strong, and you exhaust yourself fighting it. But with self-love, you climb onto a boat and allow the river to carry you. You may steer lightly when needed, but you no longer resist the flow. You trust that the river is leading you where you need to go. This is what it means to let go of control, to stop resisting life and begin trusting it. Letting go of control does not mean giving up responsibility. You still make choices, set intentions, and take action. But you release the illusion that you can control outcomes. You plant seeds, but you do not command the rain. You walk the path, but you do not dictate the terrain. Without self-love, releasing outcomes feels terrifying because you rely on results to prove your worth. With self-love, you can release outcomes peacefully because your worth is already secure. One of the most common areas where people cling to control is in relationships. Without self-love, you may try to control how others see you, how they treat you, or even how they live their lives. This often stems from fear of rejection or abandonment. But control suffocates love because love cannot breathe in cages. Self-love gives you the courage to release this control. You begin to trust that those who are meant for you will stay, not because you force them, but because the connection is true. You also trust that if someone leaves, you will still be whole. This trust frees both you and them, allowing love to flow authentically rather than fearfully. Another place control shows up is in our pursuit of success. Many people believe that if they plan every detail perfectly, they can guarantee a certain outcome. But life often laughs at such plans. Opportunities arise unexpectedly, and so do setbacks. Without self-love, these surprises feel like threats, and so you cling harder, pushing yourself to exhaustion. But with self-love, you trust that even detours and delays are part of the journey. You stop demanding that life obey your timeline, and you start cooperating with the natural unfolding of events. Success becomes less about rigid control and more about graceful alignment. The fear of uncertainty is at the heart of control. People cling to control because they want to eliminate the unknown. But the unknown is inevitable. The future will always be uncertain. Without self-love, Uncertainty feels unbearable because you do not believe you can handle it. But with self-love, you see uncertainty differently. You begin to trust that while you cannot know what the future holds, you can trust yourself to face it. This trust turns uncertainty from a threat into an adventure. Buddhism often compares life to clouds moving across the sky. They change shape constantly, never staying the same. Trying to control life is like shouting at the clouds, demanding they form into your desired shapes. Self-love allows you to sit back and watch them drift, appreciating their beauty without needing to command them. You realize that life is more peaceful when you observe rather than control, when you participate rather than dictate. Letting go of control also means releasing the past. Many people cling to regrets, replaying events as though they could be rewritten. Others cling to identities, old roles, old stories that no longer fit them. Without self-love, letting go feels like losing yourself. But with self-love, you realize you are not defined by the past. You can release it because you carry within you everything you need for the present. The more you love yourself, the more courage you have to loosen your grip on what is gone. Equally, letting go means releasing the need to control the future. We often think, I'll only be happy when I get there, when I achieve that, when life looks like this. This mindset keeps us trapped in anxiety because the future is never certain. Self-love teaches you to stop postponing peace. It reminds you, I can be at peace now, even as I walk toward my dreams. I do not need to control tomorrow to be grateful today. This shift frees you from the endless chase and roots you in the present moment. Let us consider the practice of meditation. When you first sit to meditate, the mind races. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, judgments about the present. The natural impulse is to control the mind, to force it into silence. But the harder you push, the louder the thoughts become. The practice is not control, it is letting go. You watch the thoughts arise and pass, like clouds in the sky, without clinging to them. This is the essence of letting go in life as well. Self-love helps you do this because it gives you the patience and gentleness to sit with yourself without judgment. Another layer of control lies in perfectionism. Many people try to control life by making themselves flawless, believing that if they never make mistakes, nothing will go wrong. But perfectionism is another illusion. No matter how carefully you try to control yourself, you will still stumble. Without self-love, every stumble feels catastrophic. But with self-love, you accept your humanity. You realize you do not need to be perfect to be safe, to be loved, or to be enough. Releasing control becomes easier when you release perfection. So how do we practice letting go of control through self-love? Begin by noticing where you cling. Do you replay conversations, trying to control what others think of you? Do you obsess over outcomes, trying to force life into your timeline? Do you micromanage yourself or others? When you notice these patterns, pause, breathe. Remind yourself, I cannot control everything, but I can trust myself to handle what comes. This affirmation, repeated daily, begins to soften the grip of control. Another practice is surrender. Each day, set your intention, take your actions, and then consciously release the outcome. Say to yourself, I have done what I can. Now I trust life to unfold as it will. Self-love supports this because it assures you that even if things do not go as planned, you will still be worthy, you will still be enough, and you will still be safe within yourself. Ultimately, letting go of control is an act of trust. Not blind trust in life alone, but deep trust in yourself. It is the recognition that you cannot command the river, but you can trust your ability to float, swim, and flow with it. Without self-love, this trust is impossible. With self-love, it becomes natural. You no longer need to cling desperately, because you know that whatever comes, you will not abandon yourself. Remember this, life is not meant to be controlled, it is meant to be lived. The more you cling, the more you suffer. The more you release, the more you find peace. Self-love is what makes release possible because it gives you the inner foundation to trust both yourself and life. When you love yourself, you can let go. When you let go, you can flow. And when you flow, you discover freedom. Self-love teaches you compassion for all living beings. When we first hear the words, love yourself, many imagine it is something small, something contained only within the boundaries of one's own heart. Some fear that loving oneself is selfish, as though turning inward means turning away from the world. But in truth, genuine self-love is the opposite of selfishness. It is the foundation from which true compassion flows outward. When you learn to love yourself fully, your flaws, your wounds, your imperfections, you discover the ability to love others in their wholeness too. Self-love is the root, and compassion is the fruit. Without the root, the fruit cannot grow. Why is this so? Because the way you treat yourself becomes the lens through which you see others. If you are harsh with yourself, you will be harsh with others. If you condemn yourself for every mistake, you will find it easy to condemn others. If you carry shame within, you will judge the world through that shame. But if you practice kindness toward yourself, you begin to soften. You realize that imperfection does not make you unworthy, and so imperfection in others does not make them unworthy either. By forgiving yourself, you learn to forgive others. By being patient with yourself, you become patient with others. By showing compassion inward, compassion naturally flows outward. Buddhism teaches that all beings are interconnected. The suffering of one is tied to the suffering of all. The peace of one supports the peace of all. But to recognize this truth, you must first look within. Many try to practice compassion for the world without first cultivating compassion for themselves. They give endlessly, but because they have not healed their own self-hatred, their compassion becomes thin, strained, even resentful. They help others, but deep down they still feel unworthy. This creates imbalance, like trying to pour from an empty cup. Self-love fills the cup so that your compassion is not forced or drained, but abundant and natural. Consider the way anger spreads. If someone is harsh to you and you have not learned self-compassion, you may carry that wound and pass it to another. Hurt people, as the saying goes. But the same is true of love. When you treat yourself with gentleness, you heal your own wounds instead of spreading them. That healing ripples outward. Loved people love people. Compassion begins with you, but it does not end with you. It radiates naturally into your relationships, your community, and even towards strangers. One of the reasons compassion can feel difficult is because we often see others' flaws and mistakes so clearly. It is easy to judge, to think they should know better, they should act differently. But if you reflect honestly, you will see that you too have stumbled. You too have acted out of ignorance, fear, or pain. When you practice self-love, you remember that your mistakes did not erase your worth, and this realization allows you to see others differently. You begin to understand that behind every harmful act lies suffering. The person who lashes out in anger is suffering. The person who acts selfishly is suffering. Compassion becomes possible when you see beyond the act and recognize the wound beneath it. And this ability comes from first having seen your own wounds with compassion. Imagine standing before a mirror. If you hate your reflection, you carry that energy into the world. You see fault everywhere because the fault within blinds you. But when you look into the mirror with love, accepting yourself fully, the way you see others shifts too. You see humanity instead of fault, vulnerability instead of failure. Self-love polishes the mirror of perception so that compassion becomes clear. Buddhism often uses the metaphor of the bodhisattva, the being who vows to awaken not only for their own liberation, but for the liberation of all. But to walk this path of compassion, one must first have the strength to carry it. That strength comes from self-love. The bodhisattva does not neglect themselves. They cultivate wisdom, kindness, and stability within so that they can serve without burning out. In the same way, when you love yourself, you become a stronger vessel for compassion. You can hold others' suffering without drowning in it because you have learned to hold your own. Self-love also dismantles the illusion of separation. Often, we see ourselves as separate from others, my life, my pain, my joy. This separateness breeds indifference or even hostility. But when you love yourself, you begin to see yourself in others. You recognize that the same struggles you faced, fear, doubt, longing, grief, exist in every human heart. This recognition awakens empathy. A stranger's tears no longer feel foreign, they echo something within you. Compassion arises because you see yourself reflected in all beings. It is worth reflecting on the role of judgment. Many of us walk through life with a mind full of judgment toward ourselves and toward others. Judgment creates distance. It says, "You are wrong, I am right. You are bad, I am good." But judgment is often just a projection of our own inner pain. When you learn to release self-judgment through love, you naturally judge others less. Instead of harshness, you offer curiosity. Instead of condemnation, you offer understanding. Compassion is born not from superiority, but from humility, from knowing that we are all struggling, learning, and imperfect. Compassion, however, is not pity. Pity looks down on others. Compassion stands beside them. When you love yourself, you stop seeing compassion as a performance to prove your goodness. You do not help others to gain approval or recognition. Instead, compassion becomes authentic. You help because you see their suffering as connected to yours. You love because love feels natural. Self-love strips away the ego from compassion, leaving only genuine care. One of the most profound practices in Buddhism is metta bhavana, or loving-kindness meditation. In this practice, you begin by sending love to yourself. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. Only after cultivating this love inward do you extend it outward, to a loved one, to a neutral person, to a difficult person, and finally to all beings everywhere. The structure of this practice reveals a truth. Compassion begins with self-love. If you skip the first step, your loving kindness may feel forced. But if you truly generate love for yourself, extending it outward becomes natural, like ripples spreading from a stone dropped in water. Self-love also expands compassion beyond humans to all forms of life. When you begin to care for yourself deeply, you develop reverence for life itself. You see the interconnectedness of existence, how the food you eat, the air you breathe, the earth you walk upon, all sustain you. Gratitude for your own life blossoms into compassion for the animals, plants, and ecosystems that make life possible. You realize that harming them is harming yourself, because all life is interwoven. This awakening shifts how you live. You choose more gently, more mindfully, more lovingly, because you see all beings as worthy of compassion. There is also the matter of anger and resentment. Many people struggle to feel compassion for those who hurt them. But here again, self-love is the key. If you do not love yourself, anger festers because you confuse forgiveness with weakness. You think that letting go of resentment means excusing harm. But when you love yourself, you see forgiveness differently. You forgive not to deny the harm, but to free yourself from the poison of hatred. And in this freedom, compassion becomes possible, even for those who caused you pain. You begin to see their ignorance, their suffering, their humanity. Compassion does not excuse their actions, but it releases your heart from chains. Consider the metaphor of a candle. A candle that burns brightly does not diminish when it lights another flame. Instead, the light multiplies. Self-love is your flame. Without it, you struggle to share warmth because you are dim and depleted. With it, you can ignite countless candles without fear of losing your own light. This is the essence of compassion, love so full within you that it naturally extends outward, multiplying without end. Compassion also requires boundaries, and this too comes from self-love. Many confuse compassion with self-sacrifice, giving until nothing remains. But this is unsustainable. True compassion honors both self and other. It recognizes that saying no can be compassionate if it prevents harm. Self-love helps you discern when giving is healthy and when it becomes destructive. It ensures that your compassion is rooted in wisdom, not in martyrdom. Ultimately, self-love teaches you that compassion is not limited. Love is not a pie that runs out if you give too many slices away. Love is infinite because it regenerates through giving. The more you love yourself, the more you can love others. The more you forgive yourself, the more you can forgive others. The more you care for yourself, the more care flows outward. This is the paradox of love. It begins with the self, but it never ends there. So remember this: to love yourself is not to turn away from the world, but to prepare yourself to embrace it. When you cultivate self-love, you heal the wounds that would otherwise block compassion. You stop projecting your pain onto others. You release judgment, resentment, and fear. You become a vessel of love, overflowing naturally into the world. And in that overflow, compassion for all living beings arises, not as a duty, not as a performance, but as the most natural expression of a heart that is whole. It is worth noting that silence does not mean withdrawal from the world. It does not mean never speaking, never acting, never engaging. Rather, it means cultivating an inner stillness that remains even in the midst of activity. You may be surrounded by noise, but within, you carry silence. This inner silence allows you to act from peace rather than reactivity, from wisdom rather than fear. Self-love nurtures this inner silence because it reduces the internal noise of self-criticism. When that voice quiets, silence naturally arises. Practicing inner silence can begin simply. Sit for a few minutes each day without distractions. No phone, no music, no conversation. Just sit and breathe. At first, the mind will chatter loudly. Do not fight it. Simply watch. Say gently to yourself, "It's okay. Let the thoughts come and go. I am here, and I love myself as I am." Gradually, the thoughts will settle, like mud sinking in water, and the clarity of silence will emerge. You can also practice silence in daily life. When walking, turn off distractions and listen to the sounds of nature, the wind in the trees, the birds singing, the rhythm of your footsteps. When eating, turn off the television and savor the silence of the meal, the taste, the texture, the gratitude. When with others, allow moments of quiet without rushing to fill them. These small practices cultivate inner silence, which over time becomes a deep well of peace. In the end, the power of silence is that it connects you to your true self. Beneath the noise of the world and the chatter of the mind, you are already whole, already peaceful, already free. Silence reveals this truth. Self-love is the doorway that allows you to enter. Without it, silence feels unbearable. With it, silence becomes the greatest gift. Remember this: the world will always have noise, but you do not need to be consumed by it. You can carry silence within you, like a steady flame in the wind. When you love yourself, you trust that silence is not emptiness, but fullness, not loneliness, but connection, not weakness, but strength. Self-love teaches you to enter silence without fear, to rest in its peace, and to let it guide you. And in that silence, you discover the universe within. As we reach the closing reflection of this long journey into the heart of self-love, it becomes clear that everything we explored was never truly about learning something external, but rather about remembering what was always within you. The teachings of Buddhism remind us again and again that suffering is not caused by the world itself, but by the way we relate to it. And one of the greatest shifts you can ever make is the way you relate to yourself. When you learn to embrace yourself, to honor your own humanity, to forgive your mistakes, to nurture your wounds, and to see yourself with the same eyes of compassion that the Buddha taught us to extend to all beings, then you realize that the very key to transformation was in your hands all along. Life stops feeling like a battlefield of expectations and disappointments, and instead it becomes a sacred journey of awakening where every experience, whether joyful or painful, is an invitation to love deeper, to grow wider, and to expand your consciousness beyond the narrow limits of fear and self-criticism. Think back to how many times in your life you searched for validation from others, hoping someone's approval would finally make you feel enough. How many moments did you wait for a relationship, a job, or recognition from the world to give you worth? And yet, each time, the satisfaction was fleeting, slipping through your fingers like water. Why? Because true worth cannot be given from the outside. The Buddha said that just as a candle cannot burn without fire, man cannot live without a spiritual life. And part of that spiritual life begins with the ability to look in the mirror, see all your imperfections and scars, and still whisper, "I am enough, I am worthy, I am loved." Without this, no amount of praise will satisfy, but with this, even in silence, you will feel complete. The journey of self-love is not selfishness. This is one of the greatest misunderstandings. Many people confuse self-love with self-indulgence or arrogance, but real self-love is quiet, humble, and deeply kind. It does not scream for attention, nor does it place you above others. Rather, it roots you in balance so that you can give without exhaustion, serve without resentment, and forgive without bitterness. Imagine a tree. If its roots are dry, it cannot provide shade or fruit, but when it nourishes itself deeply, its branches expand wide, offering shelter to all beings around it. This is the image of a human being who loves themselves. They become a refuge for others. And isn't this what the Buddha himself embodied? He did not reject himself, nor did he drown in guilt for being human. Instead, he sat under the Bodhi tree with full presence, embracing his own struggles, temptations, and fears. By doing so, he awakened not only to his own liberation, but also to the interconnected liberation of all beings. His journey was not separate from self-love. It was the greatest act of it, because it recognized that awakening is not abandoning yourself, but seeing yourself clearly and compassionately until no separation remains between you and the world. In your own daily life, self-love will not always appear as grand spiritual realizations. Sometimes it will be as simple as allowing yourself to rest when your body is tired instead of pushing through with cruelty. Sometimes it will be forgiving yourself for words you said in anger and choosing to learn rather than to punish. Sometimes it will be waking up in the morning, placing your hand on your chest, and thanking your heart for beating tirelessly through every storm you have endured. These small acts are not trivial. They are sacred rituals of honoring your existence. And with each one, you soften the walls of self-hatred, you dissolve the illusions of unworthiness, and you return to the simple truth that you are a human being, alive in this very moment, and that is already a miracle. The more you practice this, the more you will notice the ripple effect. You will begin to treat others differently. You will listen more patiently, because you no longer carry the weight of your own unhealed judgment. You will forgive more easily because you have learned to forgive yourself. You will give without losing yourself because your well of love is replenished from within. And you will no longer fear loneliness because you will realize that you are never alone when you are at home within your own heart. From this place, relationships blossom not from desperation, but from abundance. Work becomes not a way to prove your worth, but a way to express your inner values. And life itself transforms into an unfolding dance of love and awareness. When you doubt, remember this: even the lotus, the most beautiful of flowers, grows in the mud. Your past, your mistakes, your pain, none of these disqualify you from love. They are the mud that nourishes your growth. Without them, you could not bloom. Self-love does not mean denying your shadows. It means embracing them as part of your wholeness. To walk the Buddhist path is not to become flawless, but to awaken to the perfection of your imperfection, to see the sacred even in your struggles, and to honor your journey with gentleness. So, as this teaching draws to a close, take a deep breath. Place your hand upon your heart. Feel the rhythm of life pulsing inside you, the same life that flows through rivers, through trees, through every creature that breathes. You are part of this vast web of existence, not separate, not broken, but beautifully alive. If you can learn to treat yourself with the same reverence you would treat a holy temple, if you can bow inward with the same humility you would show a great teacher, then you will discover that enlightenment is not far away. It begins here, in this moment, with how you love yourself. Carry this truth into your days. The way you love yourself becomes the way you experience the world. If you choose harshness, the world will appear cruel. If you choose kindness, the world will reflect compassion. If you choose to believe you are unworthy, no amount of success will satisfy you. But if you choose to honor your own heart, you will see beauty in every sunrise, wisdom in every hardship, and love in every corner of existence. And so, let this be your practice, not just today, but always. Love yourself first, not as an act of ego, but as an act of awakening. Watch how your life changes, not because the external world suddenly shifts, but because your inner world finally learns to rest in peace, in acceptance, and in joy. For when the heart is at peace with itself, the whole universe feels like home.